The dollar was clipped to the top right corner of the transfer form, wrinkled down the middle and soft as cloth. Mara stared at it while her brothers laughed. Not hard, exactly. Brett let out one surprised bark and covered his mouth. Nolan leaned back in the attorney's leather chair, smiling the way he did when a salesman confirmed something he had already decided not to buy. "Sorry," Brett said. "I'm sorry. It's just $1." Claire Doherty, who had handled Frank Keene's will, waited for the room to settle. Your grandfather gave Mara the exclusive option to purchase the garage, its equipment, and the parcel beneath it for $1. Nolan glanced at Mara. "Does the dollar come with it?" It appears Frank intended that it should. That made Brett laugh again. Between them, Mara's brothers had just inherited every house their grandfather owned. She had inherited the chance to buy a building with a collapsed gutter, 2 dead hydraulic lifts, and a closed sign that had been hanging in the window for 11 months. For $1, Mara touched the bill with one finger. She knew its texture. She had smoothed bills like that on the garage counter while Frank stood behind her, complaining that she faced all the presidents the same direction, like a bank robber with manners. What she did not know was whether this was the last proof that he believed in her, or the final time he had mistaken cruelty for a lesson. Claire cleared her throat. "You don't have to decide today." "She'll decide today," Nolan said. Mara looked at him. He had worn a navy suit to the meeting, though Claire's office was above a pharmacy in downtown Bellwether, and the radiator clanked like somebody trapped inside it. Nolan always dressed for the version of the room he thought ought to exist. At 37, he had perfected a calm, expensive face that made other people feel disorderly. Brett had come straight from a remodeling job. There was white dust in the creases of his hands and a crescent of dried caulk on his sleeve. He was 33 and built like the heavy things he was always volunteering to lift. Of the two, Brett was easier to forgive and harder to trust. Mara folded her hands beneath the table. Her nails were still stained yellow near the cuticles from Frank's nicotine patches. He had sworn he wasn't smoking anymore, which was technically true because the oxygen machine made everybody threaten to kill him if he tried. Claire looked from one sibling to the next. "Perhaps we should finish reviewing the distributions before discussing the option." "There's more?" Brett asked. "No, I mean the practical terms." They had already spent 40 minutes on the practical terms of the houses. Nolan received Frank's bungalow on Sycamore Street, where Mara's clothes still hung in the hall closet, along with the brick duplex next door. Brett received the 2 narrow rental houses past the railroad crossing, both painted the brownish yellow Frank called wheat and Mara called old mustard. Frank had bought all 4 properties over 3 decades, usually when somebody else thought they were too ugly to save. There had been no conditions beyond the usual ones, no puzzle, no deathbed test of character. The houses were theirs, the garage was different. Claire slid a page toward Mara. "The property transfers as is. That includes the fixtures and equipment listed in the inventory. It also includes outstanding taxes, code compliance obligations, and any business liabilities determined to have survived the closure." "How much?" Mara asked. "The exact total is still being calculated." Nolan's smile thinned with satisfaction. "That means more than $1. "It usually does," Claire said. Mara almost liked her for that. Brett shifted forward, forearms on his thighs. "Come on, Mayor. You saw the roof last winter. The back office smells like a dead squirrel. That was a dead squirrel." "Okay, well, I feel like that supports my point. The squirrel was removed. Was the smell informed?" Claire took off her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. Mara looked at the bill again. Frank had signed beneath the clause 9 years earlier. 9 years. That was before his hands began to shake and before his lungs turned every walk from the kitchen into a negotiation. It was also before their worst fight, when she had built a simple appointment calendar on the garage computer, and he accused her of making customers feel like numbers. The next morning, he had used it to print his schedule. He had never apologized. Frank did not apologize. He brought you a sandwich with the mustard scraped off, or replaced the windshield wipers you had not mentioned were bad, and expected you to understand that the subject was closed. Maybe this $1 was one of his apologies. Maybe it was just another sandwich left beside an argument. Nolan tapped the table softly. "Mara, you don't want the garage?" She raised her eyes. "I haven't said anything. You don't have to." "You were planning to leave Bellwether?" Brett looked at her. "You were?" "I've been planning a lot of things." With what money? Nolan asked. There it was. He could turn concern into an audit without changing his tone. Mara had $914 in a savings account. She had accumulated it $20 at a time, then spent nearly half on the portable oxygen concentrator insurance refused to cover. She had been browsing jobs in Columbus during the sleepless hours when Frank's breathing filled the baby monitor on her nightstand. There were warehouse supervisor positions there, medical supply jobs, apartments where nobody had ever seen her buying adult diapers for a man who had once carried an engine block with another mechanic and claimed he did most of the lifting. "I'll figure it out," she said. "I'm not criticizing you. You only tap the table when you're criticizing somebody." He stopped tapping. Brett looked down to hide a smile. Nolan removed his hand from the table. "I'm saying Grandpa left you a burden because he knew you'd attach meaning to it. You don't have to prove anything by accepting." The comment was so close to Mara's own fear that it felt stolen. Claire placed the garage keys beside the transfer form. 3 keys hung from a faded red tag. Mara recognized the square brass one for the front office, the silver one for the bay door, and the small dark key that stuck unless you lifted the back door while turning it. Nolan kept talking. The lot would be useful to the duplex. Parking has always been a problem there. Once the estate is settled, I could take responsibility for clearing the structure. You'd walk away clean. Clearing it? Eventually. You mean tearing it down. I mean dealing with it. Frank used to say dealing with it whenever he meant doing something ugly with both hands and no discussion. Dealing with a raccoon meant a trap. Dealing with an invoice meant a phone call that made the parts supplier regret being born. Dealing with Mara's father had meant not speaking his name for 12 years. Mara reached for the keys. Nolan exhaled through his nose. "Don't do something stupid just because I told you not to. That does make it more attractive." "Mara." She picked up the dollar. The paper had been folded and unfolded so many times it wanted to close around her finger. Claire put her glasses back on. "To be clear, taking the keys today does not complete the transfer." "What does?" "Your signature, acknowledgement of the as-is condition, and payment of the stated consideration." Mara set the dollar in front of Claire. Brett rubbed both hands over his face. "Oh, hell." "Language," Mara said automatically. Both brothers went still. Frank had said that every time Brett swore in the bungalow, while swearing freely in the garage, the truck, the backyard, restaurants, and once during Christmas Eve service when the candle wax ran onto his thumb. A laugh escaped Mara before she could stop it. It came out wrong, thin and breathless, too close to the sound she had made beside Frank's bed when the hospice nurse turned off the oxygen. Brett's expression changed first. His irritation fell away, leaving him looking older and unguarded. Nolan looked toward the window. For a few seconds, they were only 3 exhausted adults in a hot office, all of them waiting for their grandfather to come barging in and tell Claire she charged too much for chairs. This uncomfortable. Then Nolan gathered the property documents into his leather folder. "Fine," he said. "Buy the garage." Mara signed. Outside, July heat had softened the asphalt. The pharmacy's sign blinked the time and temperature, 2:14, 94 degrees. Though Mara did not trust either number. Bellwether's courthouse clock disagreed by 7 minutes, and the air felt hot enough to peel labels off medicine bottles. Brett caught up with her beside her hatchback. "Mare," she kept walking. "Hey, I wasn't laughing at you. You were facing me. It created that impression. I was laughing at Grandpa. That's much nicer." He stepped in front of her car door. Up close, she could see gray beginning in his beard beneath the drywall dust. $1, Mara. That's exactly the kind of thing he'd think was funny. He didn't think wills were funny. He thought funerals were funny. He thought his funeral was funny. He wanted Nolan to read that poem. Brett's mouth twitched. Nolan would have done it too. Frank had left instructions requesting that Nolan read a 3-page cowboy poem at the service. Claire had gently explained that the page was not legally binding. Mara still suspected Frank had included it solely to prove death could not stop him from making Nolan uncomfortable. Brett leaned against her car, then stood up quickly when the metal burned him. "Ow! Damn it! Language! Don't start!" For the first time since the meeting, she smiled without pain attached to it. Brett smiled back, but it faded quickly. "You really wanted that place?" Mara looked across Main Street. A delivery truck blocked the view of the courthouse steps. A woman in green scrubs hurried toward the pharmacy, pressing her purse against her side. Somebody had left a terrier in the shade beneath the florist's awning, and it watched traffic with deep suspicion. I don't know, Mara said. That's not a great reason to take on a building. It's not a great reason to take on a house either. His face closed a little. The rentals produce income. They also need foundations. Grandpa kept them up. Grandpa said he kept them up. Brett dragged a thumb along his dusty palm. He knew the difference. As a contractor, he knew better than either of them what Frank's repairs could hide. But for years, he had complained that Grandpa trusted Nolan with money, and Mara with the garage while calling him only when a porch sagged. The two rental houses had probably felt like correction arriving in an envelope. I can inspect the roof for you, he said. On the garage? No, Buckingham Palace. Yes, the garage. For free? His offended look was almost convincing. I'm your brother. That has never answered a pricing question. He laughed once. I'll inspect it. Then, when I tell you it's terrible, you'll believe me. Mara unlocked her car. I already believe it's terrible. Then why'd you sign? She looked at the 3 keys in her palm. Because Nolan wanted the lot. Because Frank had given her the option 9 years ago, when she still believed learning every sound an engine made might earn her a place beside him. Because she had spent 14 months helping a proud man stand, wash, breathe, and die. And now everybody expected her to leave his house carrying 2 duffel bags and a slow cooker. Because the garage had a concrete floor, and houses could have their locks changed. I paid for it, she said. I should at least go see what I bought. Keene's garage sat 6 blocks away, on the edge of a neighborhood that had grown around it and then slightly beyond it. The shop was a low cinder block building painted the color of weak coffee, with 2 blue bay doors and a flat roof Frank had been meaning to replace since Mara could remember. Weeds pushed through the gravel along the fence. The pole sign still said, Keene's Garage, honest work, fair price, though rust had eaten most of the H in honest. Mara parked beside the office. For 11 months she had driven past without stopping. At first Frank had insisted the closure was temporary, then winter came, and he could no longer climb the bungalow stairs. The garage became another word they avoided, like hospice. The brass key resisted. Mara jiggled it, leaned her shoulder against the door, and heard Frank's voice as clearly as if he stood behind her. Don't sweet-talk it. Lift and turn. That's the back door, she muttered. She lifted anyway. The lock opened. Heat and old smells met her in layers. Rubber, dust, mouse droppings, stale coffee, and the deep mineral scent of oil that no cleaning ever removed. Sunlight came through the blinds and narrow bars. The customer counter was buried beneath envelopes. Frank's stool stood behind it, the vinyl split in the shape of a crooked smile. On the inside of the front window hung the sign, closed. Mara walked past it without turning it around. In the first bay, Frank's red toolbox waited beneath a gray film of dust. One drawer was not fully shut. She pushed it closed with her hip, then rested her hand on top. The silence was wrong. This room had always clicked, hissed, rang, complained. Even empty, it should have contained a radio announcer arguing about baseball, and Frank dropping something metal, followed by a word forbidden in the bungalow. Mara pulled the chain for the work light. Nothing happened. She tried again, as if the second pull might persuade the electricity to remember them. From somewhere behind the building came a hard metallic knock. Mara froze. The knock came again, followed by a woman's voice through the open office door. Frank, you dead in there, or are you ignoring me? Mara knew that voice. She stepped back into the sunlight and found Lenora Pike beside a dusty Buick, one hand planted on its roof and the other holding a white bakery box. Lenora stared at her, then at the keys in her hand, then past her, toward the dark garage. Oh, she said, the impatience leaving her face. So it's you. Lenora wore her silver hair cut straight at the jaw, as if she still worked around machinery and expected anything loose to get caught. At 68, she had the compact build of somebody who had spent 4 decades lifting objects people assumed she needed help with. Frank used to call her Pike even after 25 years of knowing her because, according to him, Lenora sounded like a woman who taught piano. You know he's dead, Mara said. I attended the funeral. You just asked if he was dead in there. I also asked if he was ignoring me. One of those has been true at least once a week since 1998. Lenora lifted the bakery box. First Friday. It's Wednesday. I got confused. You never get confused. Fine. The bakery gave me too many bear claws. Mara opened the box. There were 6 of them arranged in wax paper, their icing softening in the heat. You ordered 6 bear claws by accident? I'm trying to perform a kindness. Don't interrogate it to death. Frank had never trusted food described as flaky, but he had eaten Lenora's bear claws by tearing off each almond and saving them in a row on a paper towel. Mara stepped aside. Lenora entered the office and stopped. The envelopes on the counter, the dust, and Frank's empty stool seemed to alter her from the inside. She set down the box carefully, avoiding an oil-dark circle left by years of coffee mugs. I heard the boys got the houses, she said. Bellwether must have installed faster internet. Worse, your brother Nolan has a mouth. He told you? He told the pharmacist. The pharmacist told the woman ahead of me. She turned around and told me before I could pay. Mara picked up the stack of envelopes and tapped it against the counter, though there was no reason to straighten mail addressed to a dead man's closed business. Lenora glanced toward the bays. And you got this? I bought it. So I heard. For $1, he included that detail. Of course he did. He sounded proud of himself. Mara put the envelopes down harder than necessary. He got a house and a duplex. Pride was probably involved. I meant, Nolan sounded proud of the $1. Lenora could put a burr under a sentence and wait for you to sit on it. Mara declined. What's wrong with the Buick? Lenora's eyebrows rose. You didn't come here because of bear claws. That is a hurtful thing to say about my character. You parked with the hood facing the bay. I always park with the hood facing forward. You backed into Frank's mailbox twice. Once. The second time, the mailbox leaned into me. Mara walked out to the Buick. It was a 2004 LeSabre in the blue-gray color Frank called Old Lady Camouflage. Lenora had purchased it used 12 years earlier and treated it with the aggressive loyalty other people reserve for sports teams. The driver's seat had a woven wooden bead cover, and a cardboard air freshener shaped like a pine tree hung from the rearview mirror, long since depleted of any scent except hot cardboard. Lenora held out the key. Mara did not take it. The garage is closed. I noticed. The electricity's off. My engine runs on gasoline. I don't have insurance. I don't have a business license in my name. I have owned this place for roughly 12 minutes. You made good time from Claire's office. Mara looked at the Buick, then back at the dark shop. What did they tell you? She asked. That I need a transmission. Who's they? The bright red place on Route 9, where everybody wears matching shirts. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting. What's it doing? Shuddering at red lights, hesitating when I pull away. Yesterday it stalled at the bank, and a man in a convertible honked like he believed shame could restart it. Any warning lights? The little orange engine. How long? Lenora squinted at the windshield as though consulting it. Since Easter. Lenora. It was a very busy spring. Mara took the key. The Buick started on the second turn. Its idle climbed, dipped, and settled into an uneven tremor that passed through the steering column. Mara listened with her eyes closed. Frank had taught her to do that, then mocked her for looking mystical. A car will tell you what hurts, he used to say. Trouble is, half of them lie. She pressed the brake and shifted into drive. The idle sank hard enough to rattle the loose change in the cup holder. Lenora stood outside with her arms crossed. Transmission? I haven't moved 6 feet. They moved it 6 feet. Charge me $89. Mara shifted back to park and opened the hood. Heat rolled over her face. The engine compartment had a fresh rectangle of white chalk on one component and a bright inspection sticker from the other shop. She checked what she could reach without equipment, following hoses with her fingertips and looking for movement where there should be none. Her hands remembered before the rest of her did. Frank kept a flashlight attached to the side of his toolbox with a magnet. Mara found it exactly where it had always been, though the batteries were weak enough to produce only a yellow glow. She leaned over the Buick again. Start it, she called. Lenora got behind the wheel. Mara traced the hiss. It was faint beneath the engine, more felt than heard. A narrow vacuum line had split near the elbow, where heat and age had hardened the rubber. When Mara pinched it closed, the engine smoothed. She held it a moment, feeling the difference. Frank would have grunted. Not approval, never that. Just a small sound declaring that the universe had behaved as he expected. Turn it off. Lenora emerged. Well, you don't need a transmission? I knew that. No, you didn't. I strongly resented the possibility. Mara showed her the split. You need a vacuum line. I may have one that fits, but I have to look. Frank's bins covered an entire wall, each with a handwritten label. The labels had once followed a system. Over the years, the system had become a biography of Frank's patience. Common fittings were sorted by diameter. Uncommon fittings lived under MISC. Items that had annoyed him were labeled junk that cost too much. One drawer simply said, no. Mara found the correct line inside a bin marked GM hoses, mostly. She cut a length with Frank's utility knife and installed it in the parking lot. No lift, no electricity, no diagnostic scanner. The entire repair took 14 minutes, most of which involved freeing a rusted clamp without dropping it. Lenora started the engine again. The Buick settled into a steady idle. Her face did not change, but her hand rested on the steering wheel more gently. Put it in drive, Mara said. Lenora did. The engine held. How much? Nothing. Lenora shifted into park. Try again. The hose was sitting in a bin. It probably cost $3 when Grandpa bought it. And your time? I'm not open. You repaired my car. I looked at something, with a wrench, pliers. Oh, then by all means, be poor. Lenora opened her purse and took out two 20s. Mara backed away from them. I can't ring it up. The register isn't even plugged in. Use your fingers. You are remarkably pushy for someone receiving free auto repair. I am remarkably pushy under all conditions. She tucked the bills beneath the wiper blade of Mara's hatchback. Mara snatched them off. Lenora, charge me $40 or I'll go back to the red place and let them replace my transmission. I will tell everyone you sent me. You wouldn't. I once kept Frank on the phone for 2 hours because he overcharged me 90 cents for a cotter pin. He undercharged you for the repair. That wasn't the point. What was the point? I don't remember. It was 2007. Mara looked down at the money. $40 felt absurdly large for a scrap of hose and dangerously small against the building behind her. Lenora leaned against the Buick. He told me you'd come back. I never left. You stopped working here. He stopped paying me. He stopped paying everybody. Ellis got paid. Ellis stole the cash box. Borrowed. Frank fired him. Frank fired him 3 times. I'm speaking about the second. Mara folded the 20s once. Grandpa didn't tell me he wanted me back. Frank didn't tell rain to fall. He just left buckets everywhere. That sounds wise until you remember the roof leaked for 15 years. Lenora smiled. Mara turned toward the shop. I don't know what I'm doing with this place. Obviously. I mean, I don't know if I'm reopening it. I didn't ask. You brought your car. I brought bear claws. The car brought itself. Lenora opened the driver's door, then paused. Your grandfather showed me that appointment calendar you made. Mara looked at her. He complained about the colors for 20 minutes. Said nobody needed a computer telling them when Dale Mercer's van was due for brakes. He hated it. He printed 3 copies in case the computer died. The Buick's door creaked as Lenora climbed inside. He could have told me that, Mara said. Yes. Lenora said it without softening Frank or defending him. That was the closest thing to kindness Mara had received all day. After the Buick disappeared around the corner, Mara carried the $40 inside and placed it in the empty register drawer. The register opened manually if you struck the lower left side with the heel of your hand. She had learned that before she learned long division, and had never been sure which skill served her better. She ate half a bear claw standing at the counter. Then she opened the envelopes. The first was a shut-off notice from the electric company, already fulfilled. The second was a property tax statement. The third came from Bellwether Auto Supply and included 3 unpaid invoices. Frank had continued ordering parts 2 months after the garage officially closed. Small items mostly. Belts, filters, brake pads, a water pump for a Ford that did not appear in the work ledger. Mara found the ledger beneath the counter. Frank's handwriting deteriorated over the final pages. His capital letters remained broad and stubborn, but the numbers wandered above the lines. Some jobs were marked paid. Others had question marks. One entry read, Dale, front end again, followed by 3 underlines. In the desk drawer, Mara found peppermint candies fused into 1 striped mass, 2 spark plugs, and a property tax envelope Frank had opened and then folded around nothing. The total due made the $40 in the register seem like a joke told by a meaner man. Her phone buzzed. Nolan. We need to discuss your move-out date. Mara stared at the message until the screen went dark. By the time she returned to Sycamore Street, Nolan's SUV was parked in Frank's driveway. The bungalow looked smaller with it there. He had propped the front door open and was carrying empty boxes into the living room. "You said I had 30 days, Mara said. He set the boxes beside Frank's recliner. The indentation in its cushion had not yet risen. "You do." "Then why are you boxing things?" "I'm not. These are for you." She looked at the clean new boxes, each printed with Nolan's mortgage company logo. "You brought branded eviction supplies? They were free. Somehow that makes it worse. I'm trying to help." "No, you're trying to make the next thing happen before this thing is finished." Nolan's jaw tightened. He looked toward Frank's recliner rather than at her. "This thing finished last Thursday." The quiet that followed frightened them both. Nolan picked up the boxes again. "I have someone coming to assess the house Friday." "For what?" "Repairs, paint. I may rent it. You've owned it for 4 hours." And in those 4 hours, the roof continued aging. Mara almost told him about the garage invoices. She stopped herself. Nolan noticed. "What?" "Nothing." "How bad is it?" "I said nothing. You always say nothing like it has receipts." She walked past him toward the stairs. "Mara, I'm tired. That's why I want you to think clearly. You can still undo this." She turned on the second step. Nolan stood among the boxes in his suit, holding one with both arms. For a second, he looked less like an owner than a man who had arrived too late to help carry something. "I fixed Lenora Pike's Buick today," Mara said. He blinked. "What?" She needed a vacuum line. "The garage isn't operating. I'm aware. You can't just repair cars out of a closed building. She paid me $40. Nolan stared, then laughed once, not cruelly this time, almost sadly. "Mara, you owe more than $40. I know. You don't even know how much more. I know that too." She went upstairs before he could answer. The next morning, she drove to the garage with the transfer keys on the passenger seat. She told herself she was going to photograph the inventory for insurance estimates. She told herself the work clothes in her duffel bag were for dust. Lenora's Buick was already parked outside. Beside it sat a white plumbing van that rattled at idle like a drawer full of silverware. Dale Mercer stood near the office door, holding 2 coffees. Lenora held another bakery box. When Mara got out of her car, Dale raised one hand. "Morning," he called. "Pike says you're open." "She says a lot of things," Mara called back. Lenora lifted the lid of the bakery box. "I have apple fritters this time. That doesn't make you honest. It makes me welcome." Dale Mercer was somewhere in his late 50s, with a long torso, narrow shoulders, and a mustache the color of steel wool. Mara remembered him sitting in the waiting room, with plumbing catalogs spread over both knees, taking emergency calls while Frank complained that indoor plumbing had made people weak. Dale held out one of the coffees, black, 2 sugars. Mara accepted it before remembering she was supposed to resist. "How do you know how I take coffee?" Frank did. "That doesn't answer the question. He'd make yours by mistake, get mad at it, then give it to me." Lenora looked pleased. "See? Community." "You're trespassing," Mara told her. "So are you, according to the sign." The closed sign remained in the office window. In daylight, Mara could see a clean rectangle around it where the glass had been protected from dust. Dale nodded toward the plumbing van. "I can come back if this is a bad time. It's all a bad time." "What's it doing?" Lenora made a triumphant sound through a mouthful of fritter. Mara pointed at her. "Not open." Dale sipped his coffee. "Understood. What's it doing?" "Rattles over bumps. Pulls right if I brake hard." Frank looked at it before he got sick. Inside the office, Mara opened the work ledger to the entry she had found the day before. Dale, front end, again. Beneath the underlines, in fainter pencil, Frank had written, "Check lower R." That was all. "Did he tell you what he found?" "He said he needed to put it up." "And then?" Dale rubbed the back of his neck. Then he closed. The words were plain, without accusation, which made them heavier. Mara took a drink of coffee. It was exactly right. "I can't inspect it," she said. "I can't promise I can repair it here. The lifts don't work, the electricity's disconnected, and I don't have parts access yet." "I've got a floor jack," Dale said. "So do I." "Mine's in the van." "This is a garage, Dale." I was making conversation. The floor jack beneath Frank's main bench had lost pressure. It raised the van 4 inches, then settled back down with a tired sigh. Dale wisely did not comment. Mara found the older jack in the rear bay under a tarp, along with 2 heavy stands. The garage floor was cool through her shirt as she slid beneath the van. Dale had not exaggerated the rattling. The right lower ball joint had enough play to make Mara's stomach tighten. One sway bar link was nearly finished, and the front tires had worn unevenly. She checked the left side, then crawled out with grit in her hair. "You've been driving this on the highway?" "Some." "Define some." "Most days." "Don't." Dale looked toward his van as if it had personally betrayed him. "I need it this afternoon." "You need a right lower ball joint more. I've got a shut-off valve replacement in Marion. Then you need a different van." "I don't own a different van." Lenora closed the bakery box. "You can use my Buick." Dale stared at her. "For plumbing tools? Put down a blanket. You don't let people eat crackers in that car. Crackers have edges." Mara wiped her hands on a rag. "The Buick can't carry half his equipment." "I can move the appointment," Dale said, though he sounded like the words physically hurt. "Move it." He took out his phone and walked toward the fence. Lenora watched him go. That man rescheduled his own hernia operation because a hotel toilet kept running. I didn't need to know that. "You're welcome." Mara went inside and called Bellwether Auto Supply. She had known the counterman, Russ, for years, but his voice became formally sympathetic when she gave her name. "I heard about Frank," he said. "Real sorry, thank you. He was something. He was usually something." Russ laughed, then quieted when Mara gave him the part numbers she needed. His keyboard clicked over the phone. "I can have those after lunch." "Great, but I can't put them on Keene's account," I figured. "There are 3 invoices. I found them. I tried calling." He stopped answering numbers he recognized. I noticed. "How much to clear it?" Russ gave her the total. It was not impossible, which somehow made it worse. Impossible could be dismissed. This was merely large enough to reach into every part of her life and take something. "What about cash on delivery?" she asked. There was a pause. "I can do cash. Same shop rate." "Mara." "Same rate." Another pause. "Retail until the old balance is handled." Retail would erase most of what Dale could reasonably pay for the repair. "Okay," she said. "Order them." When she hung up, Dale stood at the counter. "You should have asked me first," he said. "I haven't told you the estimate. You ordered parts. I can return them." "At retail?" She disliked that he had heard. Mara found one of Frank's blank estimate forms and wrote out the parts and labor. She had to stop twice to remember what Frank charged, then stop a third time, because his prices no longer mattered. She checked the number with a calculator from the desk. Dale studied the estimate. "That's less than the Red Place charged Lenora to scare her. It's more than Grandpa would have charged." "Your grandfather thought $30 was a fair diagnostic fee until last year. He thought cell phones were a temporary fad." Dale signed the estimate and put a debit card on the counter. "I can't process that." He replaced it with cash from his wallet. Mara took only the parts deposit. $40 from Lenora had already turned her thoughts strange. Dale's money felt different because it came with a promise she might fail to keep. "You understand, I can't align it," she said. "Not unless I get the rack powered and know it still works. Do what you can. That isn't the same as making it safe. Then tell me when it's safe." It was the kind of answer Frank had trained his customers to give him. Mara wondered how many years it took to earn that much trust and how many minutes it took to spend it. After Dale left in Lenora's Buick, Lenora remained at the counter. "You can go," Mara said. "I know." "Then why aren't you?" "Your hair has cobwebs in it." Mara brushed at her head. "Other side," she brushed again. "I was lying. Please find a hobby. I had one. Frank died." Mara looked at her. Lenora's mouth tightened, not enough to tremble. She collected the coffee cups and put them in the trash. "You need electricity," she said. "I'm aware. What's the deposit?" "I haven't called." "Call. I don't need supervision. Then I'll eat in the car. You already ate 2 fritters. Grief." Lenora took the bakery box outside. The electric company required $420 to restore service under the new business name. Mara asked why. The representative used the phrase commercial risk category 3 times without making it mean anything. Her savings account had $914. The property tax statement in her bag demanded nearly 3 times that. The roof would demand more. The furnace probably had appetites of its own. Mara gave the woman her debit card number. When she finished, she sat on Frank's stool and looked at the black register, the black computer monitor, and the dust-covered light switch. Her balance was now $494. The $40 from Lenora still sat in the register drawer. Dale's parts deposit was tucked into an envelope with his signed estimate. She had separated it automatically, just as Frank taught her. Never spend a customer's parts money on your own trouble. Frank had broken that rule near the end. The unpaid supply invoices suggested he had broken it more than once. A truck door slammed outside. Brett entered carrying an aluminum ladder over one shoulder. "You have a customer's van on stands. I have eyes too. Is it Dale's?" "No, I stole an identical plumbing van." He put the ladder down beside the building. "Nolan said you fixed Lenora's car. Nolan has a mouth. That's what Lenora says. Does nobody in this town have a job? I'm on lunch. It's 10:30. I had breakfast early." Brett circled the van, crouched, and looked beneath it without touching anything. Ball joint and sway bar link. "You doing it on the floor?" "Unless the electricity comes back before the parts arrive." "You called them?" "Yes." "How much?" Mara stared at him. "Fine. None of my business." The statement sounded so unnatural coming from Brett that they both waited for him to correct it. He picked up the ladder. "Roof? You volunteered. I'm already regretting it." Brett climbed while Mara steadied the base. He moved more carefully than she remembered. Once, years ago, he would have taken the ladder 2 rungs at a time, while Frank yelled that gravity did not care how handsome he thought he was. On the roof, Brett went quiet. That was worse than swearing. "Well," Mara called. He walked toward the rear corner, each step producing a soft crunch of gravel and old roofing material. "When did the office ceiling start leaking?" "Last winter." "When did it stop?" "It didn't." Winter stopped. He crouched near the gutter. "There are 4 patches up here. Grandpa liked patches. One is made from a flattened coffee can. He liked coffee." "Mara." "How bad?" Brett sat back on his heels. "The rear section has to be replaced. The rest might hold through summer if I seal the seams and fix the drain." "How much?" "For materials?" "For reality." He looked down at her. His face had lost the teasing expression he arrived with. "I can patch it," he said. "You just said it was already patched. I can patch it correctly." "How much?" "I've got leftover membrane from a commercial job. Is it stolen?" "It's leftover." That pause was long. It was contractually abandoned. "Brett, I can keep water out of the office? No charge." Mara tightened both hands around the ladder. "Why?" "Because if you're going to make a terrible decision, I'd prefer you not drown in it." He looked away before she could answer and began pulling dead leaves from the roof drain. The power returned at 1:17. Every fluorescent fixture came on at once, including 3 Mara had forgotten existed. One flickered violently. Another emitted a hum as deep as a distant airplane. The radio on Frank's bench woke to static, and the office clock began blinking midnight. Mara stood beneath the lights with her hand still on the switch. The garage looked worse illuminated. It also looked possible. Russ delivered the parts at 2. By 3, Mara had Dale's right front suspension disassembled. The lower ball joint bolts were rusted nearly round, and the impact wrench protested each one. Brett had left after sealing the roof seams, taking half a fritter, and refusing the money she did not offer. Mara broke 1 bolt loose and felt the old satisfaction travel up her arm. The next would not move. She adjusted her stance and tried again. The compressor groaned. The impact wrench hammered uselessly against the rust. "Come on," she whispered. The compressor shut off with a metallic cough. Silence settled over the bay. Mara checked the breaker, reset it, and tried again. The motor buzzed but would not turn. Dale's van remained on stands. The parts were open. The afternoon was disappearing. A shadow crossed the office doorway. The man who stepped inside was leaner than Mara remembered, his dark hair clipped short and his work shirt clean, except for a smear of grease near one pocket. Ellis Boone stopped beneath the close sign and looked from the dead compressor to Dale's disassembled van. "Pike called me," he said. Mara lowered the wrench. "Why?" She said, "You were open." "I'm going to replace that sign with a restraining order." Ellis glanced up at it. "No," he said. "Sign looks accurate." Ellis walked to the compressor without waiting to be invited. Mara moved between him and the machine. "I didn't ask for help." "You didn't call me. Different problem. I'm handling it." "Looks handled." His voice had changed. Years ago, Ellis spoke quickly, as if every silence might expose him. Now he left space around words. It made him harder to argue with. Mara folded her arms. "Do you still work at Parson Tire?" "No." "Why not? Because they closed. I didn't know that. You've been busy. He said it without glancing toward Frank's empty stool. Ellis crouched beside the compressor. It was an ancient upright tank with a motor Frank claimed had been manufactured during a period when Americans still feared God. Mara had heard him threaten to replace it every winter and defend it every spring. Did it trip? Ellis asked. I reset the breaker. Tank full, half. Unloader hiss when it shut off. I was using the impact. So, you don't know. I know what an unloader valve does. I know you know. I asked if you heard it. Mara had not. Ellis unplugged the compressor, bled the line pressure, and removed the cover from the pressure switch. He worked without touching anything unnecessary. His hands were steady. That unsettled her more than if they had shaken. Contacts are cooked, he said. One side sticking. It tried to restart under load. Can you fix it? Not correctly with what's here? I need correctly. Then you need a new switch. For today, I can clean the contact and adjust it enough to finish one job. You don't leave it powered overnight. Frank left it powered for 30 years. Frank thought carbon monoxide was something invented by furnace companies. Mara almost smiled. Ellis found fine sandpaper in the third drawer of the red toolbox. He knew which drawer without searching. You've been in here since he fired you? She asked. No. You went directly to the sandpaper. He kept it there since Clinton. Which Clinton? The one who played saxophone. That is disturbingly specific. The other one didn't. He cleaned the contacts, reseated the cover, and opened the tank drain until rusty water spat across the concrete. When he plugged the compressor in again, the motor caught. The tank began filling with its familiar uneven thump. Ellis listened. Bearings are going. Everything here is going. Some things are farther along. Mara connected the impact wrench. Thank you. He nodded once and started toward the office. You can stay, she said. Ellis stopped. I mean, until I finish Dale's van, in case the compressor quits again. Is that why? Yes. All right. He leaned against the bench, close enough to help, and far enough not to look as if he had assumed a place. The rounded bolt still refused to move. Ellis watched Mara reposition the impact twice. You're not square on it, he said. I am. You're loading your wrist. I'm fine. You always say that before you get hurt? You always criticize someone holding a power tool? Only if I'm standing where the socket will fly. Mara stopped and looked at him. Ellis lifted both hands. Your shop. The phrase landed strangely. Not Frank's. Hers. She moved the van's work light, adjusted the angle, and tried again. The bolt came free with a crack sharp enough to echo through both bays. Ellis said nothing. That was your opportunity to look smug, Mara told him. I'm pacing myself. They worked without calling it working together. Mara removed the damaged joint while Ellis cleaned the mounting surface. He held the new part as she checked it against the old one. When she reached for a wrench, it was already in his hand, offered without ceremony. Frank had made every shared task sound like an argument with tools. Ellis made it quiet. The silence did not mean trust. Mara remembered the morning Frank discovered money missing from the register. Ellis had been 28 and pale, talking too loudly about a towing charge. Frank told him to leave. By noon, half the town knew Ellis Boone had borrowed from the cash box. By evening, the word borrowed had developed quotation marks. You paid him back? Mara asked. Ellis was tightening the new sway bar link. He did not pretend to misunderstand. Eventually? How eventually? 8 months. He said it was $40. 42. He fired you over $42? Ellis set down the ratchet. No. He fired me because I drove Mrs. Vedder's car after I'd been drinking. The compressor thumped behind them. Mara stared at him. He never said that. He didn't want Mrs. Vedder to know. Did she? No. I backed it out, stalled it, and Frank took the keys. Mara had been at the warehouse that day. When she came to the garage after work, Frank was replacing a broken caster on a stool, striking it harder than necessary. He told her Ellis was gone and the matter was finished. Why did you take the money for more of the thing that got me fired? Ellis picked up the ratchet again. You wanted the truth. I did. People usually want the cleaned version. Grandpa gave me the cleaned version. He gave everybody the version he could control. There was no bitterness in Ellis's voice. That did not make the words kinder. Mara watched him torque the fastener, then check it twice. How long? She asked. 6 years, 3 months. She knew what he meant. Good, she said. Ellis nodded. Yeah. Dale returned just after 5 with Lenora and 2 canvas tool bags crammed into the Buick's back seat. Lenora stood beside the car, supervising, while Dale extracted a pipe wrench from beneath a folded blanket. There's grease on my upholstery, she announced. That was there, Dale said. There has never been grease in this vehicle. You owned it when Frank worked on it. Frank respected fabric. Ellis came out of the bay wiping his hands. Dale paused. Well, look what the highway dragged back. Still fixing the same pipes? Ellis asked. Pipes keep being pipes. You keep wearing that mustache. It hides a scar. No, it doesn't. They shook hands. Lenora studied Ellis from shoes to hair. You look better. That's what people say when they mean older. You're also older. Thank you, Pike. Don't thank me. You still owe me a headlight. I replaced that headlight. You replaced the bulb. The emotional damage remains. Mara lowered Dale's van from the stands. Before the road test, she pumped the brakes, checked the wheel torque, then drove slowly across the gravel. The clunk was gone. On the street, the van still pulled slightly right. The alignment rack? She asked when she returned. Ellis looked through the open second bay. The rack occupied the rear half of the bay, buried beneath dust, old tires, and a folded campaign sign Frank used as a drip mat. Its control cabinet had not been turned on in nearly a year. Maybe, Ellis said. That sounds confident? It was temperamental when people spoke kindly to it. They cleared the tires, swept around the tracks, and powered the cabinet. The screen flashed a manufacturer's logo, went blue, and froze. Ellis opened a side panel. Frank used to kick it, Mara said. He kicked the cabinet. The problem's in the left sensor connector. How do you know? I'm the one who told him. Ellis unplugged the connector, cleaned it, and secured it with a narrow zip tie. The screen restarted. The calibration took 2 attempts. By the time Mara drove the van onto the rack, the office windows had turned gold with evening sun. Ellis attached the sensors while she entered the vehicle information. Dale watched from behind the safety line. You two reopening? He asked. No, Mara said. Yes, Lenora said at the same time. Ellis looked at the closed sign. I'm staying out of it. The right front toe was far enough out to explain the pull and the tire wear. Mara adjusted it while Ellis read the numbers from the screen. When they finished, the steering wheel sat straight and the van tracked cleanly down Sycamore. Dale paid the remaining balance in cash. Mara wrote him a receipt from Frank's old book, then crossed out Frank Keene, owner, and wrote Mara Keene above it. The change looked temporary, like something a substitute teacher would write on a classroom board. Dale read it without comment. My sister Natalie's got a squeal when she brakes. Does she know this, or are you volunteering her car? She knows the squeal? She doesn't know I'm volunteering. I am not open. What time should she not come? Dale. Saturday? Saturday is 3 days away. She'll be here at 9. Before Mara could refuse, he carried his tools to the van. The engine started smoothly, then the body gave a thin metallic buzz. Mara frowned. Dale leaned out the window. Still rattles. She crouched beside the passenger side and struck the exhaust lightly with her palm. A loose heat shield vibrated. 10-minute fix, Ellis said. Dale turned off the van and climbed back out. The 10-minute fix took 25 because one mounting point had rusted through. Mara cut a wide washer from scrap metal while Ellis found a replacement bolt. When the engine started again, the buzz was gone. Dale slapped the steering wheel. Knew I brought it to the right place. You brought it here because Lenora bullied you. Still counts. He drove away before Mara could discover something else wrong. Lenora followed, but not before placing the remaining fritters in the office and telling Mara she was too thin. The accusation was inaccurate and delivered with great authority. When the Buick and van disappeared, the garage seemed to expand around the quiet they left behind. Mara counted the money in the register. After parts, she had earned less than she expected, and more than she had possessed that morning. It did not touch the tax bill. It would barely cover the replacement pressure switch and a week of groceries. Ellis washed his hands at the utility sink. The soap dispenser was empty, so he used dish liquid from beneath it. What do I owe you? Mara asked. Nothing. I don't take free labor. You took a free roof patch. That was family guilt. Different accounting category. Ellis dried his hands on a shop towel. I stopped to see if Pike was exaggerating. She usually is. Not this time. Mara looked at the clean tools, the repaired compressor, and Dale's signed estimate in the drawer. I can pay you for today, she said. You can't. I just counted the money. So did I. Frank never learned not to count cash where mechanics could see. I'm serious. So am I. Ellis glanced toward the red toolbox. You need a pressure switch before you need me. I need both. The words escaped before Mara could measure them. Ellis's expression did not change, but his hand stopped on the shop towel. 3 days, Mara said. I can guarantee 3 days at what Parson paid you. After that, if there's work, we divide the labor revenue until I know what this place can carry. What if there isn't work? Then Lenora will drag people in off the highway. She might. 3 days, no promises after. Ellis set the towel down. You're charging Frank's old labor rate. I adjusted it. By $5. It was a stressful morning. You'll lose money on anything that fights back. Then help me fix the rate. He considered her across the counter where Frank had once accused him, paid him, fed him, and finally sent him away. I start at 8, Ellis said. Mara looked up at the closed sign. 7:30, she said. Now you sound like Frank. No? Frank would have said 7 and arrived at 8. For the first time, Ellis smiled. 7:30, he agreed. Ellis arrived at 7:22, carrying a paper sack, a thermos, and the new pressure switch. Mara, who had slept badly and reached the garage at 7:17 out of pure competitive instinct, pointed at the box in his hand. I was going to buy that. You were going to pay retail. So were you. I know Russ's brother. I know Russ. Russ likes his brother. Ellis set the box on the counter with the receipt. He had paid $26 less than the price Russ quoted Mara. You could have told me yesterday, she said. You could have asked whether I knew where to get one. I didn't know you were applying for procurement. I didn't know 3 days came with a title. Mara reimbursed him from the register before they did anything else. Ellis counted the bills, then pushed $5 back. What's that? You overpaid. I was testing you. No, you weren't. No, she admitted. I wasn't. They installed the pressure switch before opening the bay doors. The word opening bothered Mara. It suggested the opposite of the sign still hanging in the office window, and she was not ready to make that kind of declaration to traffic. Ellis tested the compressor through 2 cycles. It shut off cleanly both times. Good, he said. How long will the bearings last? Longer if we don't discuss them where they can hear. They drank coffee over Frank's old rate sheet. It was taped beneath the counter and dated 4 years earlier. Several prices had been corrected in Frank's handwriting, usually downward. His shop labor rate was low enough to make Ellis rub one hand over his face. This isn't a business, he said. It was. It was Frank's method of slowly giving away a building. He owned the building. You don't. Mara used the desk calculator to add expenses. Power, insurance, disposal fees, parts markup, payroll. The calculator's 7 keys stuck unless struck near the top. Frank had solved that problem by avoiding totals containing 7. When Mara entered a reasonable labor rate, she stared at the number. People won't pay that. They pay more on Route 9. They hate Route 9. They'll hate us too. They can do it at a discount. Frank never charged Lenora that. Frank spent 2 hours arguing with her over 90 cents. That was recreation. Ellis took a marker and changed the number. Not as high as he first suggested, but high enough to make Mara uncomfortable. We post it, he said. We estimate before touching anything. If you want to help somebody, you discount the invoice where they can see it. That feels showy. It keeps you from forgetting you helped them. Mara looked at him. Frank forgot, Ellis said. Then he got angry that everybody needed him. Before she could answer, a beige sedan pulled into the gravel lot. The woman who climbed out moved slowly but upright, with one hand resting briefly on the roof. Mara recognized Evelyn Vetter from the wool coat she wore to church even in mild weather, and from the name Frank had protected 6 years earlier. Ellis's marker stopped above the rate sheet. Evelyn entered carrying an envelope. I found a coupon. Mara looked at the envelope. For us? It says $5 off an oil change. Where did you get it? My kitchen drawer. The coupon had expired 8 years earlier. Frank's cartoon face appeared in one corner, drawn by somebody who had given him much better hair than he ever possessed. Mrs. Vetter, Ellis said. She blinked at him, then smiled. Elliot. Ellis. That's what I said. He did not correct her again. Evelyn handed Mara the coupon. Frank always honored these. Frank printed these when oil costs less than milk. He should have put a date on it. He did. Right here. I can't read that. Neither could Mara. Evelyn's thumb covered it. We'll honor it, Mara said. Ellis glanced at her but said nothing. Evelyn gave Mara the keys. It makes a ticking noise when I turn left, but only when I have somewhere important to be. Does it know? It knows from my blouse. While Mara wrote the estimate, Ellis drove the sedan into the first bay. He climbed out too quickly and left the door open. You okay? Mara asked quietly. Yeah. You don't have to work on it. Yes, I do. She doesn't know. I know. That was the problem. The ticking came from a plastic wheel well liner rubbing the tire during sharp turns. Ellis secured it while Mara changed the oil. Evelyn watched from the office, eating the last apple fritter and giving a detailed account of her neighbor's unsuccessful patio. When the job was finished, Mara applied the $5 discount. Ellis handed Evelyn the keys but kept his gaze on the counter. Evelyn touched his wrist. You look healthy, she said. He went very still. Thank you. Frank said you moved away. For a while. He worried about you. Ellis looked toward the bays. Frank worried angrily. He did everything angrily. Evelyn patted his hand, collected her receipt, and left. They listened to the sedan crunch across the gravel. Mara waited. Ellis picked up the marker. We need a separate diagnostic rate. She let him have the silence he had given her. By noon, they had serviced a pickup belonging to a retired mail carrier and inspected a florist's van with a torn axle boot. Neither job was large. Both customers remembered Mara. One called her Margaret, then apologized 4 times. The other asked if Frank still kept lemon drops in the office and became embarrassed when Mara said no. Mara entered each name into the old computer. Frank's appointment program opened automatically. The calendar she had built years earlier still occupied the desktop. Its colored columns looked crude now, but it worked. She updated the labor rate, created customer files, and set reminders for the repairs they could not do that day. Ellis leaned over the counter. You made this? He hated it. He used to print tomorrow's appointments and tape them to the toolbox. Mara kept typing. Lenora told me. He also kept a copy in his shirt pocket. That seems excessive. He didn't trust the computer. He trusted paper. He trusted pockets. At 1:30, Nolan parked his SUV directly in front of the closed second bay. Mara watched him get out. He had abandoned the suit for pressed khakis and a blue shirt, with the sleeves rolled exactly twice. Your brother always looked like a catalog selling lake houses? Ellis asked. Yes. Nolan entered and looked at Ellis. Didn't know you were back. Been back a year, Ellis said. In Bellwether? On Earth. Nolan turned to Mara. Can we talk? We are. Privately. Ellis picked up the florist's keys. Road test. The axle boot is torn, Mara said. I'll drive gently. He left by the rear door. Nolan watched him go. You hired him? For 3 days. Does Claire know? Why would the estate attorney approve my mechanic? He stole from Grandpa. Grandpa also let him drive a customer's car drunk and told everybody the theft was the problem. Nolan's face changed. What? You didn't know either. No. For a moment, they stood on the same side of Frank's silence. Then Nolan glanced at the cash register. You need to be careful. I'm being careful. You've known you own this place for 2 days. I've known Ellis longer. That isn't reassuring. What do you want? Nolan looked toward his SUV. The duplex tenant in the downstairs unit has been using the edge of this lot for parking. Grandpa allowed it. The blue pickup? Yes. I want to formalize it. Formalize how? Reserve 2 spaces for the duplex. It increases the rental value. Mara laughed before she could help it. I don't mean for free, Nolan said. You offered to clear my building so you could have the lot. Now you want to rent spaces from me? I'm trying to find a practical arrangement. You're blocking a bay. It's closed. The door is closed. The bay isn't. Nolan studied her. Behind him, the compressor started, filling the pause with its repaired thump. How much? He asked. I don't know. 2 spaces, nights and weekends. I work Saturdays. Since when? Since Dale volunteered his sister. Nolan's eyes moved to the office window. The sign says closed. So does my face, but you're still here. He almost smiled. That made Mara angrier than if he had not. I'll move the SUV, he said. Think about the spaces. It could cover part of your electric bill. I paid the electric bill. With what? There's the audit. I'm your brother. That has never answered a money question. It was the same thing she had said to Brett, but it landed differently. Brett would have laughed. Nolan set his jaw. "You have 28 days at the bungalow," he said. "I know. I scheduled the assessment for Monday. I know. I need access to Frank's bedroom." Mara's throat tightened. "For paint? For measurements? He's been dead 8 days. And he will still be dead in 28. The cruelty startled Nolan as soon as it left him. His face lost color. "Mara, move your car." He did. Ellis returned after Nolan drove away. He parked the florist's van and came through the second bay, studying Mara without asking. "The boot," she said, "needs replacement soon. Not dangerous today. Put it in the estimate. You all right?" "Separate diagnostic rate," Mara said. Ellis nodded. "Separate diagnostic rate." That night, Mara packed 2 boxes at the bungalow. Nolan's mortgage company logo stared up from the cardboard while she folded Frank's spare blankets around dishes. Every room contained objects that belonged to no one until one of them touched them. She left his bedroom closed. Saturday morning, Natalie Mercer arrived at 8:43 in a red sedan with squealing front brakes. She was Dale's younger sister by 4 years and had his same narrow shoulders, though she wore her gray hair in a thick braid down her back. She managed deliveries for Cornerstone Bakery and spoke in the brisk tone of somebody whose mornings began while other people were still deciding whether to set an alarm. "Dale said 9, Mara told her. "Dale is late to everything. I adjust." Ellis inspected the brakes. The front pads were low but not unsafe, and the squeal came from a bent wear indicator. Natalie approved the repair, then stood at the counter watching Mara enter her details into the calendar. "You scheduling commercial vehicles?" she asked. "Depends on the vehicle. Our delivery van's running hot." "How hot?" "Gauge climbs at stoplights. Drops once it's moving." "Cooling fan, maybe." "That expensive?" "Maybe is free." Knowing costs. Natalie smiled. "You do sound like Frank." Mara did not know whether to take that as praise. The bakery van arrived an hour later, driven by a flour-dusted man named Roy, who handed Mara the keys and said Natalie needed it by Monday morning. The temperature gauge was normal when Mara started it. Ellis looked through the windshield at the close sign. "You taking another one?" "I'm diagnosing another one. We still have the sedan. We'll finish both. You're paying me for 3 days. Then I should get my money's worth." Ellis looked at her for a beat too long. "What?" Mara asked. "Nothing?" It was the kind of nothing that already had receipts. Mara ignored the receipt implied by his face and opened the bakery van's hood. The engine was cool. She checked the coolant level, hoses, radiator cap, and visible connections before starting it. Ellis finished Natalie's brakes while the van idled outside, its temperature gauge holding stubbornly below the middle. After 20 minutes, the needle began to rise. Mara watched the cooling fan. It did not move. "There," she said. Ellis came over and looked. "There what?" "Fan's dead. Or it isn't being told to run." Mara switched on the air conditioning. The compressor engaged, but the fan remained still. She disconnected the fan motor and checked the plug with a meter. Voltage appeared. "Power at the connector," she said. "Motor. What voltage under load?" 12.3. That's open circuit. It has power. A corroded wire can show 12 volts until you ask it to do work. The motor doesn't turn. That is also true. Mara looked at the clock. Natalie's sedan occupied the first bay. The second bay held the alignment rack, and 3 oil changes had pulled into the lot since breakfast despite the sign. One customer had said Lenora sent him. Another claimed Dale had. The third simply remembered Frank and looked surprised to find Mara at the counter. "The fan assembly is the likely failure," she said. "Likely? We have to get the part ordered before Russ closes, then do an amperage test before Russ closes. I'm doing 6 things, you're doing 7. That's the problem." Mara called Bellwether Auto Supply. Russ located an aftermarket fan assembly at a warehouse 40 miles away. A courier could deliver it by 4 for a fee that made Mara briefly hate both commerce and distance. She approved it. Ellis did not say anything. His silence followed her around more effectively than an argument. They finished Natalie's sedan just after noon. Natalie paid without objecting to the new labor rate, though Mara watched her read every line. "You fixed the squeal?" Natalie asked. "Yes. Dale said you fixed 3 rattles on his van. 2. The third was probably his tools. He says it drives straight. It does." Natalie glanced toward the bakery van. "And that?" "Cooling fan assembly." "You'll have it Monday?" "Yes." The answer came too quickly. Mara heard it after Natalie had already nodded. The replacement fan arrived at 4:12. It fitted correctly, plugged into the existing harness, and came to life as soon as the air conditioning engaged. The temperature dropped. Mara stood in front of the van with her hands on her hips. Ellis watched the fan cycle twice. Could still be the circuit. It's running. The new motor may draw less current. Which means it's running. She gave him a look. You want me to say you were right? I want you to stop constructing a disaster around a working fan. I don't have to construct those. They come assembled. Mara completed the invoice. The part markup was modest, the courier fee unavoidable, and the labor barely covered their time. Natalie returned at 5 to collect both vehicles. She paid a deposit for the van and promised the balance Monday after Roy completed the first delivery route. When Mara closed the register, the day's cash looked respectable until she subtracted parts, Ellis's wages, electricity, and the new pressure switch. The number left behind was small but positive. She wrote it in a notebook. Frank had never kept daily totals in one place. He kept some on envelopes, some in the ledger, and some in his head, where they could not be challenged. Mara created columns for labor, parts, tax, expenses, and customer deposits. Ellis looked over her shoulder. You should include your own pay. I own the place. That isn't pay. It's all my money. That's how people end up owing a supplier while thinking they made money. Mara stopped writing. Ellis took a step back. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. I meant the system. The system has been running 3 days. The old system ran a lot longer. She closed the notebook. You think I don't know what Grandpa did? I think you know pieces. So do you. Yeah? That quieted them. Ellis collected his thermos. Don't spend customer deposits. I don't. I know. You've worked here 2 days. I knew before. He left through the rear door without waiting for a response. Mara stayed until the garage was dark, except for the office light. The closed sign became a black rectangle against the window. Cars passed on the street, briefly washing the bays in white. She considered turning the sign around just to see the other side. Instead, she unplugged the compressor as Ellis had instructed and went home to pack. Sunday smelled like dust and cardboard. Mara carried boxes from Frank's spare room to the bottom of the stairs while Nolan moved through the bungalow with a measuring tape. He did not enter Frank's bedroom, though twice Mara saw him stop outside the closed door. Brett arrived with a bag of breakfast sandwiches and no announced purpose. He ate one standing at the kitchen sink, then fixed the loose cabinet hinge Frank had ignored for years. You don't own this one? Nolan told him. I know. Then why are you repairing it? Brett tightened the last screw. It bothered me. It bothered Grandpa for 15 years. No, it bothered everyone else. Grandpa enjoyed it. Mara wrapped the slow cooker in a towel. Nolan checked the measurement between the refrigerator and the wall. Are you taking that? I bought it. I didn't ask if you stole it. You ask questions in a way that adds words. Brett handed Mara a sandwich. Egg, sausage, no cheese. He remembered. She took it. For 10 minutes, they moved around one another almost normally. Brett folded the empty boxes flat when Nolan left them blocking the hallway. Nolan found the missing roll of packing tape in the freezer, where Frank had put it during his final week at home. Mara laughed until she had to sit down. Nolan laughed too, one hand pressed over his eyes. Then the laughter ended, and all three of them looked toward Frank's recliner. Brett cleared his throat. Garage roof didn't leak Friday night. It didn't rain, Mara said. Still counts. Nolan put the tape on the counter. The assessor comes tomorrow afternoon. I'll be at work. At the garage? That is where work occurs. It's a closed business. Mara bit into the sandwich. Brett looked at Nolan. People were there when I fixed the roof. That doesn't make it open. What makes a business open? Mara asked. Your permission? Insurance, registration, sustainable revenue. I have the first two. The binder had cost more than she wanted to think about, but Claire helped her transfer the old policy without a lapse. Mara had not told either brother because every fact felt safer before Nolan examined it. And revenue? He asked. I'm working on it. Nolan's gaze moved to the boxes along the stairs. So am I. At 7:12 Monday morning, Mara saw the steam before the bakery van turned into the lot. Roy pulled in with the temperature gauge near red and the heater blasting through the open windows. He shut off the engine and climbed out, his bakery shirt dark beneath the arms. You said this was fixed. Mara's stomach dropped. Ellis, arriving behind him in a faded pickup, parked and came over without hurrying. "What happened?" he asked. "Overheated at the first stop," Roy said. "I waited, added water, and came straight here. Natalie's got 3 deliveries sitting." Mara opened the hood. Coolant had pushed into the overflow reservoir. The new fan sat motionless. She turned on the ignition and air conditioning. Nothing. "Fan assembly," Roy said. "The assembly is new. It's not moving." Ellis retrieved the meter. Mara did the test she should have done Saturday. The connector still showed voltage with no load. When Ellis attached a test lamp, the voltage collapsed. He followed the circuit toward the relay box while Mara stood beside him, feeling every lost minute. The fan relay looked normal from above. Beneath it, one terminal in the socket had darkened and loosened. Heat had spread the contact enough to interrupt current underload. Ellis touched the damaged terminal. There. Mara looked at the new fan. The old motor might have been fine. She had charged Natalie for a part the van might not have needed, plus a courier fee, and promised the repair was complete. Roy leaned against the fender. "How long?" Mara swallowed. "Give us an hour. I've got bread going stale. 45 minutes. Can you do it or not?" "Yes," she said, then made herself add, "if the socket is the only damaged section." Roy studied her face. 45, he said. Russ had the relay, but not the molded socket. Ellis searched the electrical bins while Mara called 2 other suppliers. The second could get a repair pigtail by noon. "That's not 45 minutes, Mara said after hanging up. Ellis held up a dusty package. Inside was a weatherproof terminal of the correct size. Frank kept everything. "Can we replace the damaged terminal?" "Yes." "You're sure?" "No. We test after." They cut back the overheated wire, crimped and sealed the new terminal, cleaned the remaining contacts, and installed a new relay. Under load, the circuit held. The fan came on. They let the van idle until hot, shut it down, restarted it, ran the air conditioning, and repeated the test. The fan worked every time. Mara drove the van through town, with 2 heavy bags of parts in the rear to imitate a load. The temperature stayed level. Roy left 48 minutes after arriving. He did not thank her. Mara opened Saturday's invoice and calculated what she owed Natalie. The unnecessary fan, the courier charge, and Monday's lost delivery time sat in front of her in numbers. Ellis stood across the counter. The old motor may have been drawing high current, could be what damaged the socket. Did we test it? No? Then I don't charge her for our guess. The new assembly isn't worthless. It wasn't properly diagnosed. You refund the part, you're paying retail out of pocket, I know. Her remaining grocery money sat in her checking account. The garage had earned enough to cover part of the refund. The rest would come from that. Ellis rubbed his thumb along the counter edge. "I told you to test it." "Yes, I'm not saying that to be right." "You are a little." "A little." Mara called Natalie. She explained the error without cleaning it up. Natalie listened in silence. "So, the van is fixed now?" she asked. "It passed every test we should have run Saturday. And the fan? I'm refunding the part and courier charge. I'll cover the relay repair. You don't have to refund all of it." "Yes, I do." A pause. "Roy was angry," Natalie said. "He should have been. He's angry when bagels have uneven holes." He was still right. Natalie sighed. "Bring me the corrected invoice. We'll talk." When the call ended, Mara processed the refund. The balance on the calculator made her chest feel hollow. "Say it," she told Ellis. "What?" "That you warned me. You know I warned you. That's worse. Usually." He opened the appointment calendar. 4 names filled the afternoon. 2 more had been written on a paper beside the phone while they repaired the van. "You're still doing too much," he said. Mara looked at the names. "We're doing too much," she corrected. Ellis glanced at her. His 3 guaranteed days ended when they closed that evening. Mara did not have enough to promise a 4th at his old wage. "Tomorrow," she said, "we split labor after expenses, like we discussed." "You sure?" "No." "Good." "Why is that good?" "Means you tested it under load." He picked up the first set of keys. 7:30? Mara asked. Ellis headed toward the bay. 7:15, he said. "We're busy." By 7:20, 3 cars were waiting outside. One belonged to the retired mail carrier from Friday. He had returned because the pickup now made a sound he insisted it had not made before the oil change. The second was Evelyn Vedder's sedan. She wanted somebody to check whether the $5 coupon had also included tire pressure. The third belonged to a man neither Mara nor Ellis recognized, who had heard from somebody at the pharmacy that Keen's was doing free diagnostics. "We are not doing free diagnostics," Mara said. The man pointed at Evelyn. She said hers was free. "My tire pressure is free," Evelyn said. "I brought my own air." Ellis opened the first bay door. "Air is complimentary if you can catch it." The man did not laugh. Mara wrote an estimate for his warning light, explained the diagnostic charge twice, and watched him leave for Route 9. It felt like losing money. It also felt like the first sensible decision she had made before breakfast. The mail carrier's new noise turned out to be a steel thermos rolling behind the seat. He looked at the thermos, then at Mara. "That wasn't there Friday. It has your name on it. My wife writes my name on everything. Smart woman." He left $20 on the counter. Mara put it back in his shirt pocket while he protested. "You paid us to change the oil," she said. "We did not repair the thermos. You diagnosed it. Complimentary first appointment." Ellis waited until the pickup had gone. "We need a thermos rate. Put it beneath emotional damage." Evelyn's tire pressure was low in the left rear. Mara found a small nail near the tread and repaired the puncture. Evelyn tried to use the same expired coupon. "You use this Friday," Mara said. "It doesn't say one per customer. It says one per visit. This is a new visit." Mara held the coupon up. Evelyn had carefully cut away the section containing the restriction. "You mutilated it. I'm old. We get bored." Mara charged her for the repair and applied $5 under customer persistence. Evelyn examined the invoice, approved the wording, and paid. By 9, the lot had filled. Names came back to Mara in fragments. George Larkin had driven the green pickup with the dented tailgate for as long as she could remember. Ruth Ames used to bring Frank tomatoes he called too soft and ate over the sink. Leonard Cho always wanted his removed parts placed in a box, even if the removed part was a 6-foot exhaust section. They arrived older, in newer vehicles, or the same vehicles made older around them. Some asked for Frank before remembering. Others looked at Mara with such deliberate sympathy that she wanted to hide beneath the alignment rack. She took keys, asked questions, wrote estimates, and forced herself not to promise times she could not keep. The appointment calendar became full of colored blocks. Blue meant scheduled maintenance. Red meant safety concern. Yellow meant diagnosis. Green meant waiting on parts. Frank had objected to green because, according to him, waiting was not green. He never explained what color it was. Ellis studied the screen. "You've got Mrs. Ames at 10 and 10:30. 2 vehicles. She's one person." She said Leonard will drive the second. Leonard is at 11. Mara moved the blocks. Dale arrived in another plumbing van shortly before lunch. This one was newer, white with blue lettering, and smelled like fresh vinyl and pipe cement. "You bought a second van?" Mara asked. "Last fall. You brought me the rattling one first. I wanted to see if you could fix it. You tested me with the dangerous van?" "I tested you with the paid-off van." Ellis looked beneath the hood. "Business going well?" "Busy enough that I spend more time fixing trucks than sinks." Dale took a folded sheet from his pocket. It listed both vans, their mileage, and several handwritten dates. "Frank used to keep track," he said. "Oil, brakes, tires, all of it. He'd call and tell me what I'd forgotten." "Usually loudly," Mara said. Loudly worked. Mara pulled up Dale's customer file. She entered both vehicles, their current mileage, and the maintenance intervals. "I can send reminders," she said. "I don't want reminders. I want appointments." "That sounds like reminders with financial consequences." Exactly. He wanted each van inspected once a month, on alternating Thursdays before his first service call. It was not much work by itself. On the calendar, though, the 2 recurring blue blocks looked like the beginning of something that would still exist next month. "What do you charge?" Dale asked. Mara calculated inspection time, fluids, and priority scheduling. Ellis leaned over and pointed to the number without speaking. She increased it. Dale read the proposal. Frank did this for less. Frank owed the parts store money. Dale looked up. Mara wished she had not said it. Frank's debts were not a sales technique. Dale folded the proposal again. "So did I, once." He signed. Natalie came by with a corrected bakery invoice that afternoon. Mara had emailed it, but Natalie wanted a printed copy for the bakery's files. The refund appeared at the bottom in clean black numbers. "You took off the entire fan," Natalie said. We discussed that. We discussed talking about it. I charged you for the relay and terminal at cost. No labor. Natalie rested both palms on the counter. The new fan works. The old one may have worked. So, we got a new fan, a new relay, and a repaired connection. You also got a failed delivery run. Roy got a failed delivery run. Roy has been enjoying it all day. Mara frowned. He likes being wronged, Natalie explained. It organizes him. She took out a check and placed it on the counter. The amount was higher than the corrected balance and lower than the original. What's this? Half the fan. You were too fast. We also told you we needed it Monday, and you work Saturday evening. I don't split mistakes. I do. I manage people. Natalie, the bakery has a van and 2 small delivery cars. All 3 have been serviced when somebody remembers or smoke appears. I'd like that to stop. She nodded toward the computer. Can your colors handle 3 more vehicles? Mara looked at the check. Half the fan, Natalie repeated. You still lose money, just not enough to starve over. I'm not starving. You ate a 4-day-old fritter for lunch. Ellis, passing through the office with a drain pan, said. She cut off the hard part. Traitor, Mara said. Mechanic. Natalie signed a maintenance authorization similar to Dale's, though hers required early drop-offs and same-day release whenever possible. Mara entered the bakery vehicles into the calendar. 4 recurring blue blocks had become 7. At 3, Nolan's SUV pulled in, carrying 2 metal signs in the rear. He parked properly this time. Mara saw the signs before he lifted them out. Reserved for duplex tenants. You're joking, she said. I had these made before our conversation. Then you wasted money before our conversation. I want to show you where I mean. He carried one toward the gravel edge beside the fence. Ellis stopped working on Ruth Ames's car and watched from the bay. Nolan placed the sign against a post. 2 spaces here. They wouldn't interfere with the doors. They interfere with cars turning into the second bay. Only during business hours. Business hours are when business happens. The tenants would use them nights and weekends. I work Saturday. Saturday night? Mara looked at the lot. Nolan was right that the far edge went unused after closing. She hated that his idea was not entirely bad. 1 space, she said. After 6 on weekdays, after 4 Saturday, all day Sunday. It has to be empty 30 minutes before we open. 2, 1. Monthly payment in advance. How much? She named a number. Nolan stared at her. For gravel? For your increased rental value. That's more than a municipal garage. The municipal garage is 4 blocks away. I recommend it. He lowered his voice. You're enjoying this. I enjoyed the sign. You didn't let me install it. That was the enjoyable part. Nolan glanced at the cars waiting outside and the colored calendar visible through the office window. I'm trying to give you reliable income. I already have reliable income. After 5 days, after listening to people. You think Grandpa built a business from favors and phone calls? Yes. He died owing money. The words passed cleanly through her. Ellis set down his wrench in the bay. Mara kept her eyes on Nolan. 1 space. Nolan drew a breath, then offered his hand. 1 space. She looked at it. In writing, she said. He let his hand fall. Of course. He loaded 1 sign back into the SUV. The other remained leaning against the fence, useless until they changed its wording. Before leaving, Nolan stopped at the office door. The assessor thinks the bungalow needs less work than expected, he said. Congratulations. I'm listing it for rent as soon as you're out. Then I hope your tenant enjoys branded boxes. His face tightened. I packed Grandpa's clothes. Mara went still. You went into his room? Somebody had to. I was going to. You closed the door every time you passed it. That doesn't mean you get to decide when. No, the house does. That is not a sentence. It is if you own one. He left before she could answer. At the bungalow that evening, Frank's bedroom door stood open. The bed had been stripped. His shirts were folded in 3 boxes, his trousers in another. Nolan had labeled them Donate, Keep, and Mara, Check. Frank's old brown flannel lay alone across the Keep box. Mara picked it up. Nolan had folded everything badly. Sleeves twisted inward, collars trapped beneath shoulders. He had also buttoned every shirt to the top, even the work shirts Frank wore open over white undershirts. On the dresser sat Frank's watch, wallet, and the tiny screwdriver he used to adjust his hearing aid. Nothing had been thrown away. Mara found Nolan in the kitchen, scrubbing the adhesive from Frank's medication chart off the refrigerator. "You kept the brown flannel," she said. He did not turn. "He wore it to your graduation. He wore it everywhere. He wore it to mine, too." Mara leaned against the doorway. Nolan scraped at a stubborn strip of tape with his thumbnail. The assessor asked if the furniture stayed. "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know." That admission cost him something. Mara took a dishcloth from the sink and dampened it with warm water. She held it over the adhesive until the paper softened. They worked without speaking. When the last strip came free, Nolan looked at the clean refrigerator door. 23 days, he said. The reminder was quiet, almost apologetic. It still meant the same thing. Mara carried Frank's brown flannel upstairs and packed it in her own box. The brown flannel stayed in the box for 3 days. On the 4th morning, Mara took it to the garage and hung it on the hook behind the office door. She told herself she needed something warm for the overactive window air conditioner, though the unit barely produced enough cold air to disturb a receipt. Ellis noticed the shirt and said nothing. That was one of his better qualities, and, on certain mornings, his most irritating one. The appointment calendar had become too full for improvisation. Mara began printing the next day's schedule and taping one copy beside the red toolbox. Another went into her back pocket. Ellis found it there while she was bent beneath Ruth Ames's dashboard. "You made fun of Frank for doing that," he said. "I made fun of him for printing 3 copies. How many did you print?" 2. He looked toward the office printer. "Mind your own bay." The garage settled into a rhythm neither of them trusted yet. Ellis arrived first on Wednesdays because Mara picked up parts. Mara stayed late Thursdays to close Dale's fleet inspections. They reserved the first half hour each morning for vehicles people depended on for work, a rule they created after a home care nurse named Grace Holloway called, with a grinding sound in her front brakes. Mara remembered Grace's voice before she remembered her face. Years earlier, Grace had arrived 10 minutes before closing in, pale blue scrubs, near tears, because another shop said they could not look at her car until Monday. Frank refused 3 times. Mara put the car on the lift herself and found one brake pad worn to metal. Frank complained through the entire repair, then charged Grace for parts and told her she owed Mara dinner. Grace returned now with silver in her hair and the same exhausted crease between her eyebrows. "I heard Frank's granddaughter was running the place," she said. Mara pointed toward the first bay. "That would be me." "I know." Grace said it with enough certainty to stop Mara. "You explained my brakes to me," she continued. "You drew a terrible picture on the back of a pizza menu. It wasn't terrible. I thought the caliper was a potato. I was working with limited space. Frank told me you'd drawn it wrong. Then he kept the menu on his toolbox for 6 months. Mara looked toward the toolbox. She did not remember that part. Grace handed her the keys. "I came because I figured you'd tell me if it could wait." It could not. The left rear caliper had seized, ruining the pad and heating the rotor. Mara showed Grace the damage, gave her the estimate, and helped arrange the work around her evening shift. After Grace left in a borrowed car, Ellis stood beside the lift. "She didn't come for Frank," he said. "She came because she remembered getting a cheap brake job. She asked for you." Mara lowered the lift. "Hand me the 19. You have the 19. She looked down. The socket was in her hand. Ellis turned away before smiling. By the end of that week, their emergency slots were filled before the regular schedule. Mara started saying no to work they could not finish safely. Every refusal felt like pushing money out the door, but fewer vehicles spent nights disassembled in the bays. The system made the garage busier without making it chaotic. It did not make it rich. Parts took most of what customers paid. Insurance took its portion automatically. Taxes sat in a separate envelope Mara labeled, "Do not touch," as if ink could build a fence around money. Ellis received his share every Friday. Mara paid herself only enough for food, gasoline, and another stack of moving boxes. She visited an apartment above a laundromat. The bedroom window faced a brick wall, and the kitchen faucet produced water the color of weak tea for several seconds before clearing. The landlord wanted first month, last month, and a deposit. Mara calculated how many brake jobs that represented and left without filling out the application. Lenora found out by evening. "You could rent my back room," she said, while Mara checked the Buick's oil. "I don't want to rent your back room. You haven't seen it. You keep exercise equipment there. I will move the bicycle." "Where?" "The living room. You'll complain about it. I complain for free." Mara shut the hood. I have 3 weeks. You had 3 weeks several days ago. Do you keep my move-out date on your calendar? No. Nolan does, and Nolan tells the pharmacist everything. I need to start using a different pharmacy. Lenora leaned against the Buick. The room has its own bathroom. The one with the stain on the ceiling, it isn't growing. That is not the standard for ceilings. $400 a month. That's too low. $500. Now you're offended. I'm negotiating. Mara refused again, less firmly. Brett arrived the following afternoon in his work truck. He parked beyond Nolan's single-tenant space, which now had a corrected sign specifying its hours in lettering Nolan considered unattractive. Brett read the sign. You charged him for gravel? He wanted value. I'm proud of you. You should be. It's his money. Brett wandered into the rear bay while Mara finished an estimate. Ellis was aligning Dale's newer van. 2 customers waited in the office, one reading an ancient hunting magazine, and the other trying to understand why the vending machine still listed a brand of chips discontinued in 2015. When Mara found Brett, he was standing beside the portable compressor Frank used for roadside repairs. It was smaller than the main unit, but large enough to require 2 hands and a willingness to damage your back. I need to borrow this, Brett said. No, you didn't ask why. Will the reason change the noun borrow? I've got trim work at a property without power. Use a battery nailer. Mine died. Rent one. I'm asking my sister. And your sister said no. Brett looked around the bay. You're not using it. It's the backup. For what? The compressor you called a fire hazard. The big one's running. It's also older than you. Everything Frank owned was older than me. Mara glanced toward the waiting customers. I need to work. I'll bring it back tomorrow. No. Why are you being like this? Like what? Like, I'm asking for your kidney. You're asking after I answered. Brett put both hands on his hips. White paint marked one knee of his jeans. He looked tired beneath the tan, the skin around his eyes drawn tight. It was Grandpa's, he said. It was included in the garage inventory. He bought it for jobs at the rentals. He bought it through the garage. I carried it to half those houses. And now, you own those houses. That doesn't make every tool you touched yours. His mouth opened, then shut. Mara regretted the sentence, but not enough to take it back. Brett looked through the interior window toward the office. Business looks good. Business looks busy. Same thing. No. He rubbed a hand over the compressor's handle. I have to finish this job today. The customer's already 2 weeks behind paying me, and he won't release another draw until the trim's done. That sounds like his emergency. Funny how that works when it's Dale's van. Dale paid. Brett flinched. Mara lowered her voice. I can't lend out shop equipment right now. If the main compressor fails, I lose both bays. I said tomorrow. No. Brett walked out without saying goodbye. Ellis watched him cross the lot. That go well? Perfectly. Good. I hate family tension. Do you? No. Pike told me to ask more personal questions. Pike needs another hobby. Still dead. The main compressor overheated the next morning. It happened at 10, with Grace's car on the first lift, and a landscaping truck waiting for a tire repair. The motor shut down and refused to restart. Ellis removed the pressure switch cover while Mara checked the breaker. Switch is fine, he said. Motor's hot. Bearings? Maybe. We need to let it cool. Mara went to the rear bay. The portable compressor was gone. For several seconds her mind tried to place it elsewhere. Frank occasionally moved equipment with no memory of doing so, and the habit had trained everyone to distrust empty spaces. Then she saw the drag marks in the dust. Her phone showed a message from Brett, sent at 6:38 that morning. I'll have it back by lunch. Don't turn this into a thing. Mara called him. He answered with a nail gun firing in the background. I'm working. You took it. I told you I'd bring it back. I told you no. I heard you. The plainness of that answer made her grip the phone harder. Bring it now. I'm 40 minutes away. Then leave now. I have 2 rooms left. I have 2 bays stopped. You have hand tools. And a customer's truck with a tire off. Brett lowered his voice. The compressor was Grandpa's. The houses were Grandpa's. There it is. What? You think because we got the houses, we don't get to feel anything about the shop? You laughed when I got it. I laughed at the dollar. You called it a terrible decision. It was a terrible decision. You're just making it work. Mara turned away from the office so the waiting customers would not see her face. Bring it back. You got the place he cared about, Brett said. Nolan got the house he slept in. I got 2 buildings he complained about and called me to repair for free. You got income. I got foundations, furnaces, and tenants who think I personally invented rent. You wanted them. I wanted him to think I was good at something besides fixing what broke. The nail gun fired again in the background, operated by someone else. Mara leaned against the wall. He did think that, she said. Then he could have said it. The anger left his voice on the final word, exposing something neither of them knew how to touch. Mara looked at the empty place in the dust. You still have to bring back my compressor. I know. Now. A long pause followed. I'll pack up, Brett said. He arrived an hour and 6 minutes later. By then, Ellis had repaired the landscaping truck's tire with hand tools, Grace had rescheduled the rest of her brake job, and another customer had left. The portable compressor sat crooked in Brett's truck, its hose tangled around a bucket. Mara walked out. Brett lifted it down before she reached him. You don't get to take things because you're angry, she said. I needed it. You asked, I answered. You inherited every wrench. You inherited every house. His head snapped up. You think that's what this is? I don't know what this is. Neither do I. He carried the compressor toward the rear bay. Mara followed, watching him set it precisely into the rectangle it had left in the dust. Brett straightened. I'm sorry, he said. Not a sandwich, not a repaired hinge. The actual words. Mara had waited her entire life for keen men to learn them. They did not feel as satisfying as she had expected. Don't do it again, she said. Brett nodded. Then he looked toward the stalled main compressor. You want me to take a look at the motor? Mara almost laughed. Yes, she said. But this time, ask the owner. Brett removed the compressor's belt guard while Ellis held a work light. Motor mounts loose, Brett said. That explains vibration, Ellis replied. Not overheating. I'm developing a relationship with the machine. It doesn't like you. Machines like me. You took its smaller friend. Mara stood at the office counter calling Grace to apologize for the delay. She could hear every word. Brett glanced over his shoulder. Does he always do this? Yes. I worked for Frank. This is a peaceful environment. The motor bearings had begun to bind. Not enough to stop the compressor permanently, but enough that a hot day and steady use pushed it past its limit. Ellis found a replacement motor through a repair shop in Dayton. The price silenced all three of them. I can rebuild this one, Brett said. You rebuild electric motors? Mara asked. I can replace bearings. Have you? I've watched it done. Ellis unplugged the compressor. Confidence restored. They removed the motor and carried it to Brett's truck. Brett promised to have it back the following morning, then waited beside the tailgate. Do you want collateral? He asked. I know where your houses are. So do the banks. The joke came out easily enough, but he looked away after saying it. Mara noticed. How bad? She asked. How bad is what? The rentals? They're old houses. So is Nolan's duplex. Nolan inherited tenants who pay on time. You said yours thought you invented rent. They also think due dates are suggestions. He shut the tailgate. I'm fine. Mara almost reminded him what Ellis said about that phrase. Instead, she asked what she owed for the motor work. Nothing. I'm not doing family accounting, then consider it compressor rent. That was unauthorized. Charge me a late fee. I might. Brett smiled, but worry remained caught around his eyes. With the main compressor down, the portable unit ran almost continuously. It could power one impact wrench at a time, and complained if Ellis asked it to fill a tire too quickly. Mara rearranged the schedule, moved 2 repairs, and spent the day doing inspections and paperwork while Ellis handled Grace's brakes. Grace returned before closing. Your car is ready, Mara said. I took 2 hours off the labor because we moved your appointment. Why? Equipment problem. Did it create less work? No. Then put the hours back. That isn't how inconvenience works. Grace looked toward the bay. Did you make me late? No. Did you make the car unsafe? No. Did you fix what you said you'd fix? Yes. Then charge me what it cost. Mara thought of Natalie's half payment for the fan. Frank's customers had spent years learning to resist his discounts, his grudges, and his habit of deciding what other people could afford. She restored 1 hour, not 2. Grace read the invoice. You're stubborn. You came here voluntarily. I'm reconsidering. She paid, then scheduled her next oil change before leaving. The rebuilt motor returned the next morning. Brett had stayed late at a friend's workshop to press in the bearings and clean the housing. He painted over a rusted section with blue enamel that did not match anything. Why blue? Mara asked. It was open. You've wounded its dignity. It had no dignity. Ellis connected the wiring and aligned the pulley. When the motor started, the compressor sounded quieter than Mara had ever heard it. Brett stood with one hand resting on the tank. Machine likes me, he said. Ellis listened to the smooth cycle. It tolerates you. Mara wrote Brett a check from the business account for parts and 3 hours of labor. He tried to refuse it. No, she said. If I pay you, you're a contractor. If I don't, you'll come back for the alignment rack. I don't want that thing. Good. Sign here. He signed the invoice. The check was not large, but Brett folded it carefully and put it in his wallet rather than his pocket. As the garage filled, the bungalow emptied. Mara moved boxes in her hatchback a few at a time, though she had nowhere final to take them. She stacked some in the garage's rear office, beside old tax files and a metal cabinet that smelled faintly of mildew. Others stayed in her car, blocking the rear window. She told Lenora she was considering the room. Lenora raised the rent to $525. You said $500. You rejected $500. That isn't how rent works. It is my house. Does Nolan advise you? He talks too much. Occasionally useful information escapes. Mara refused on principle, then spent an hour online looking at apartments that cost twice as much. The appointment calendar moved forward one square at a time. Blue fleet blocks repeated. Yellow diagnostic blocks turned green for parts, then disappeared into completed invoices. The envelope marked, "Do not touch," thickened slowly. Mara stopped counting the days at the bungalow because Nolan did it for her. 14 days, he said when she took the dishes. 11 when she loaded Frank's tool catalogs into her car. 8 when he found her wrapping the framed photograph from the hallway. The 3 siblings standing beside Frank at a summer cookout, all of them squinting into the sun. You taken that? Nolan asked. You asked that about the slow cooker. The slow cooker was yours. So is the photograph. It has me in it. I'll cut you out. That improves nothing. Mara put it in the box. Get a copy made. Nolan looked at the image. Brett had one arm around Frank's shoulders. Nolan stood straight beside them, smiling less than everyone else. Mara was at the edge, her forearm dark with grease because Frank had called her away from the garage for the picture. I'll take it to the pharmacy, Nolan said. Why? They have a photo machine. You'll tell the pharmacist our business. He already knows. Nolan took the frame from her and brought it back the next evening with 3 copies. He gave one to Mara, kept one, and left the third in an envelope marked Brett. 6 days before Mara's deadline, her key stopped working. She came home after 9, tired enough to put the key in upside down twice. On the 3rd attempt, she realized the deadbolt was new. A white locksmith sticker gleamed above the knob. Mara called Nolan. He answered on the 5th ring over restaurant noise. What happened? You changed the locks. A pause. The front deadbolt was sticking. It worked yesterday. The locksmith had an opening. I have 6 days. I left a key under the flower pot. Mara lifted the empty pot. There is no key. I put it there myself. When? This afternoon. The house was open for an assessment. Another pause. Nolan moved away from the restaurant noise. Someone must have taken it inside. Who? The property manager, maybe. Call them. It's after 9. It was after 9 when you answered. I'm in Columbus. Mara looked through the front window. Her half-empty boxes sat in the living room. Frank's recliner was gone, removed for donation that morning. Pale marks in the carpet showed where it had stood. I'll call the locksmith, Nolan said. How long? I don't know. I have work. So do I. The words came out sharper than he intended. Mara could hear him inhale to repair them. She hung up. At the garage, the office chairs had metal arms that prevented lying across them. Mara pushed them together anyway, and discovered the arms were more committed than she was. She spread Frank's brown flannel over her as a blanket and slept on the floor beneath the counter. At 5:30, the bakery delivery van arrived for its scheduled inspection. Roy knocked on the glass until Mara woke. She sat up too quickly and struck her head on the underside of the counter. Roy peered through the window. You all right? Mara unlocked the door with Frank's shirt buttoned over yesterday's clothes. Fine. You got a bed under there? It's being serviced. Ellis arrived 15 minutes later and noticed the toothbrush beside the utility sink. He did not ask. At lunch, he left and returned with a folding camp cot from his pickup. What is that? Mara said. Diagnostic equipment. For what? Your back. I'm not sleeping here again. Good. We'll store it. She slept on it that night. Nolan sent 3 messages saying he had a new key. Mara did not answer. He brought it to the garage the next morning, placed it on the counter, and looked at the folded cot in the rear office. You slept here? I worked late. You slept here. You changed the lock. I left a key. You left it for somebody. I didn't know it was gone. You knew I wasn't inside. Nolan's face tightened. Take the key. Mara kept writing an estimate. You still have 4 days, he said. How generous. I made a mistake. You made an appointment. The mistake was leaving me out of it. He pushed the key closer. I'm sorry. There it was again. Another keen man learning the words after the damage had already become furniture. Mara took the key because refusing shelter to prove a point was a luxury she could no longer afford. She slept at the garage a 3rd night anyway. By then, her clothes were there. The morning schedule began at 6, and going back to the bungalow felt like entering a house that had already exhaled her. On the 3rd morning, Lenora arrived before Ellis. She carried no pastry box. Her gaze moved from the cot to the toothbrush, then to Frank's flannel hanging over the office chair. Get your things, she said. I'm working. You smell like motor oil and stubbornness. That's the business model. The room is 500. You said 525. I lowered it because you look terrible. That is discriminatory. Move in tonight. Mara opened her mouth to refuse. Lenora held up one finger. The ceiling stain has not grown. I marked it. With what? Your move-in date. Mara looked around the office. The register? The colored calendar? Frank's stool? It was a workplace becoming alive again, which meant it could not also be the place she hid when the work ended. 500, she said. Written agreement. I pay on the 1st. Lenora extended her hand. Mara shook it. Then Lenora looked up at the closed sign. You planning to do something about that? Not today. Good, Lenora said. I'd hate for people to find out you're here. Lenora's back room contained a brass bed, a walnut dresser, and an exercise bicycle wearing enough clothes to qualify as a second tenant. You said you'd move that, Mara said. I said I would move the bicycle. It's still here. Those are my winter sweaters. The bicycle may be underneath. The ceiling stain had been circled in blue marker with the date written beside it. Lenora had also added 2 arrows and the words, not growing. Mara set her boxes against the wall. Very reassuring. I believe in documentation. You cut the restrictions off an expired coupon. That was advocacy. The bathroom pipes groaned whenever Mara turned on the shower, and the room smelled damp after rain. It was also clean, private, and 5 minutes from the garage. Lenora gave Mara a shelf in the refrigerator, then filled it with food she claimed she did not like. They developed rules. Mara would not repair the Buick for free. Lenora would not enter the back room without knocking. Mara would pay rent on the 1st. Lenora would not report Mara's meals to Ellis. Lenora broke the 4th rule before breakfast. At the garage, customers continued arriving despite the sign. August heat brought air conditioning failures. The first cool night brought weak batteries. Mara learned to leave space in the calendar because every carefully planned day eventually produced a vehicle on a tow truck and an owner saying, "It just started doing that." The recurring fleet work changed more than the money. Dale's vans appeared on predictable Thursdays. Cornerstone Bakery's delivery vehicles came before sunrise on alternating Mondays. Oil, filters, belts, and common brake parts could be ordered before anyone needed them. Ellis spent less time waiting. Mara stopped buying everything at retail. Russ extended a small parts account after she paid on delivery for 6 straight weeks. I'm not clearing Frank's balance, he told her. This is a new account. It has my name on it? Your name and a limit low enough to insult you. I appreciate both. She paid the first statement 3 days early. The envelope marked, "Do not touch," accumulated enough for the property taxes. Mara carried the payment to the county office herself, then sat in her hatchback afterward, staring at the stamped receipt. Nothing dramatic happened. No music played. The garage did not become more attractive. It simply belonged to her without one more thread attached. She brought donuts back for Ellis. What are these for? He asked. Tax celebration. You paid taxes and celebrated by spending money? They were discounted. Frank would be proud. Take one before I fire you. By autumn, Ellis no longer worked for a percentage scribbled into Mara's notebook. The garage could support a regular wage, modest, but dependable. He made Mara add payroll taxes and paid leave before agreeing. You negotiated against yourself, she said. I negotiated for whoever you hire next. I'm not hiring anyone next. The phone rang behind them. Both bays were occupied. 3 customers waited, and Roy stood outside trying to explain that the bakery van's new noise occurred only while turning left uphill with half a load of rye bread. Ellis looked at Mara. Not yet, she said. Nolan's parking payment arrived on the first of every month. The single duplex space remained empty during business hours until a gray luxury sedan appeared there one Tuesday at 10. The driver entered holding his keys between 2 fingers. Nolan Keynes sent me, he said. Mara looked through the window. For an appointment? He said you'd take care of me. What does the car need? Brakes, I think. There's vibration. Mara checked the calendar. There was no room until Friday. I can inspect it this afternoon if you leave it, she said. Repairs depend on what we find. The man frowned. Nolan said, family rate. Ellis stopped moving in the first bay. What is family rate? Mara asked. He said you'd know. I do. It means somebody assumes I'll work for less without asking. The man shifted, embarrassed. I'm only telling you what he said. I know. That isn't your fault. She gave him the diagnostic rate and a realistic time. He accepted both, though his expression suggested he planned to call Nolan before surrendering the keys. Mara called first. You sent someone here promising a discount? Nolan sighed. He's a client. He's not my client. He is now. You did not give me business. You gave away my labor. I was trying to help. Stop helping. He's considering refinancing 2 rental properties with me. Then discount the mortgage. That's not how it works. Interesting. Nolan arrived before lunch. He found Mara at the computer and Ellis beneath the luxury sedan. The office contained 3 waiting customers, all of whom became intensely interested in their phones when Nolan entered. Outside, he said, my office. Mara. She followed him to the gravel. The rusted pole sign cast a narrow shadow between them. Most of the H in honest had disappeared. You embarrassed me in front of a client, Nolan said. You sent him without an appointment. I told him you'd take care of him. I am. At the posted rate. You could have discounted 10%. You could have paid 10%. This is what I mean about you not understanding business. Mara laughed. You own 4 houses and rent 1 parking space from me. 3 houses. The bungalow isn't producing yet. You chose to renovate it. It needed updating. It needed a tenant. It needed value. The argument shifted beneath them. Nolan's duplex roof had required unexpected repairs. The bungalow sat empty while he replaced floors Frank had refinished by hand. Nolan was spending money to make the houses look like assets he understood. Mara looked toward the garage. It looked almost exactly as it had when she paid $1, except for Brett's mismatched blue motor and the steady movement inside. You thought this place had no value, she said. It didn't. You created some. The admission surprised her. Then Nolan added, that doesn't mean you know what to do with it. There he was. What should I do? You need capital, better equipment, someone managing scheduling and customer acquisition while you focus on repairs. Someone like you? I know how to grow a business. You know how to mortgage one. I know you can't work 12-hour days forever. That's true. You're good with people. They trust you. Ellis is good in the bays. And you? I could structure it. He said the word as if the colored calendar, fleet agreements, new parts account, tax receipt, and wages had assembled themselves while Mara slept beneath the counter. You want part of the garage. I want to help you stop treating it like a rescue project. It isn't. Half these people came back because Grandpa died. They came because their cars need work. They like the grieving granddaughter story. Mara's face went hot. Nolan saw the wound and kept going because stopping would mean admitting he had aimed. Sympathy fades, sentiment fades. You need something that survives when people stop feeling sorry for you. Mara looked past him. Grace was speaking with Evelyn in the office. Dale's older van waited near the fence. The luxury sedan sat on the lift, brought by a man who had never known Frank. We have maintenance agreements, Mara said. Recurring appointments, emergency slots, supplier terms. You have a full calendar. That's not the same as a durable business. No, it's 7 full calendars in a row. Nolan's jaw tightened. Mara went inside. She did not discount his client's repair. Winter made every problem louder. The furnace failed during the first hard freeze. Mara and Ellis worked in coats for 2 days, while Brett replaced the igniter and cleaned years of soot from the burner. The bill consumed most of that month's profit, Salt ate brake lines. Cold killed batteries. Customers arrived angry at their vehicles and frightened by the cost. Mara learned to explain what had to happen now, what could wait, and what should be watched. The garage did not become an empire, it became dependable. Brett sold one of his rental houses in January. He described the sale as simplifying. Nolan called it panic. Mara knew the foundation repair had cost twice Brett's estimate, and one tenant had left after a pipe burst. Brett used part of the proceeds to clear his debts. He kept the second house and began charging properly for his contracting work instead of accepting promises. "You made me invoice the compressor," he told Mara. "It was irritating. You're welcome." Nolan's bungalow finally rented in February. The new tenant disliked the refinished floors and asked permission to cover them with rugs. Mara kept the photograph from the hallway on Lenora's dresser. The blue circle around the ceiling stain remained accurate through spring. When rain returned, Brett's roof patch held. Mara replaced the rear section properly with money set aside over 6 months. She paid Brett's company and required an invoice. He charged her the full rate, then left an extra roll of membrane labeled contractually abandoned. Frank had died in July. As the date approached again, customers began mentioning the old service day. Mara had forgotten it. Every summer, near the anniversary of the garage's opening, Frank inspected tires, tested batteries, and checked fluids for anyone who arrived before noon. He complained about the event for weeks, then bought too much coffee and stayed until dark. It wasn't charity, Lenora said. He gathered future repairs. He called it Prevent Idiots Day, Ellis added. He called every day that. The office calendar already had appointments scheduled for the anniversary Saturday. Mara looked at the blue and yellow blocks. "We can't do free inspections all day." "We could reserve the morning," Ellis said. "We'll lose billable hours. You paid taxes and bought donuts." That was different. Lenora pointed at the closed sign. "You've left that thing up for almost a year. It filters out people who can't read contradictions. You need to decide whether you're hiding or being funny." Mara looked through the glass at the lot. A year earlier, the gravel had held weeds and nothing else. Now Dale's vans had permanent appointment times. Natalie's bakery vehicles had maintenance folders. Grace came before evening shifts. People Mara had not seen since Frank was healthy, returned with names she had forgotten and trusts she had not known, belonged partly to her. "Morning only," Mara said. "Appointments for inspections, no repair promises." Ellis smiled. "Prevent Idiots Morning. We are not calling it that." Lenora was already taking out her phone. "Who are you calling?" Mara asked. "Everyone." Lenora's definition of everyone included people Mara had never met, people Frank had not seen in 10 years, and at least one man who believed a free inspection meant the garage would repair his air conditioning at no charge. Mara capped the morning at 24 appointments. Lenora booked 3 more. "I told you 24. I did not book them. I informed them to arrive. That's booking with plausible deniability." Frank never turned anyone away. Frank regularly turned people away. He shouted while fixing their cars. That's different. Mara created an overflow list. Dale offered the use of orange traffic cones from his plumbing company. Natalie ordered coffee and pastries from Cornerstone Bakery at cost, then ignored Mara's attempt to pay the invoice in advance. Grace volunteered to direct arrivals for the first hour before her shift. Mara refused all 3 offers until Ellis asked whether she planned to direct traffic, inspect 24 vehicles, answer the phone, make coffee, and personally manufacture pastries. "I can buy pastries," she said. "With what time?" "Time isn't legal tender, then you're already short." She accepted the help and wrote down every contribution so nobody's generosity could dissolve into an invisible debt. The sign came down on Thursday. Its chain left 2 clean spots on the window frame. Mara carried it to the workbench and wiped away a year of dust. Closed had been painted in Frank's narrow white letters. On the reverse, open was barely visible beneath grease and sun damage. Ellis stood beside her. "Going to replace it?" "No. The wood's split. It can be repaired." "You sound like a customer with a 1994 transmission." Mara glued the split, clamped it overnight, and sanded both sides. She repainted closed first, following the shape of Frank's letters rather than correcting them. The O leaned left. The D sat slightly too low. On the open side, she painted her own letters. They were broader and easier to read. When she finished, Ellis picked up the sign and studied both sides. "You made open larger." "Did I?" "Yes." Must be perspective. He hung it back in the window with closed facing the street. Mara did not explain why. He did not ask. Brett arrived Friday evening with folding tables, a cooler, and 2 new trash cans. I borrowed the tables, he said. Did they agree? They're from my shop. Then I'm asking whether you learned anything. I left myself a note. He set the tables beneath the overhang and inspected the roof drain without being told. The patch had survived every storm, but he still checked the seam with his thumb. You nervous? He asked. No. You repainted a sign that says you're closed. It has another side. I know. I've been waiting 11 months. Mara handed him a roll of tape. Mark the inspection lanes. Brett unrolled a strip across the gravel. Nolan, coming. I didn't invite him. You invited Lenora. Same effect. Did he say something? He asked what time. Mara looked toward the street. Then he knows. Brett pressed the tape down with his boot. He sold the duplex. She turned. What? Closing next month. He never said. He told me yesterday. Why? Roof, vacancy, market, 12 other words he uses when he doesn't want to say money. Nolan had owned the duplex less than a year. He had raised 1 rent, lost a tenant, repaired the roof, and spent weeks arguing that the property's value would rise once the garage looked active again. What about the parking agreement? Mara asked. New owner wants it, probably. That isn't what I asked. Brett straightened. You want me to tell you if Nolan's okay? I want him to tell me. Then you may be waiting. Mara looked at the close sign. Did he lose money? I don't know. He won't tell me numbers. That means yes. Or he made $3 and wants us to assume it was strategic. That sounded more like Nolan. Brett carried the trash cans to the tables. He's got an offer for you. What kind? Didn't say. I'm not selling. Maybe tell him before he prints something. I'm not signing anything. I didn't say you would. You came to warn me. I came with tables. Brett, he stopped moving. I told him it was a bad idea, he said. I also told him if he promises a family discount, you'll charge him extra. Thank you. I charged him for the advice. Nolan arrived after the sun had gone down. Mara was alone in the office, entering the final inspection slots. Ellis had gone home. Brett had left the cooler and taken his truck. Nolan carried no leather folder. He stood beneath the sign with his hands in his pockets. You repainted it. The spelling was still correct. I heard you have 40 people coming. 27 appointments. The rest are Lenora's crimes. He looked at the printed schedule. This is your old program? Updated. You could use something cloud-based. You could say hello. Hello. Too late. Nolan pulled Frank's stool away from the counter but did not sit. He turned it once, examining the split vinyl. I'm selling the duplex, he said. So I heard. Brett has a mouth. He got it from you. I made money. How much? Enough. Nolan? Not enough. The honesty sounded tired. He sat on the stool. It lowered beneath him with a slow, pneumatic sigh until his knees rose awkwardly. Mara tried not to laugh. Grandpa adjusted that for himself, she said. How do I raise it? You stand up. Nolan stood. The stool remained low. Now pull the lever. He did. The stool shot upward and struck the counter. Mara laughed. Nolan looked offended, then laughed too. He adjusted it to a reasonable height and sat again. I thought the houses were safe, he said. They're buildings. I know that now. You sold one. You still have the bungalow, and the duplex until closing, and your job. This isn't a collapse. I didn't say it was. You looked like you might. Mara saved the calendar and turned toward him. What's the offer? Nolan rubbed his palms together once. I could pay the remaining supply balance and fund a second alignment setup, office renovation, online booking, advertising, in exchange for 30%. No, you didn't ask the amount. You listed it. That's startup capital. There'd also be a salary for administrative work. Your salary? At first. You want me to pay you to own part of my garage? I'd be bringing money and expertise. You told me sympathy was our business plan. I was wrong about some of it. Which part? The customers are loyal. To Grandpa? To the place. Mara waited. Nolan looked toward the bays. To you. The admission should have pleased her. Instead, it made her sad that he had needed 12 months of full calendars to believe something Grace remembered from a pizza menu. I don't need an alignment setup, Mara said. The one we have works. It's old. So are the customers. You know what I mean. I don't need advertising. We turn away work every week, then expand. Why? Nolan stared. Mara leaned against the counter. I pay Ellis. I pay suppliers. I paid the taxes and roof. We have emergency appointments and fleet schedules. People can get their cars back when I say they will. What problem does 30% solve? It gives you room. For what? More. The word hung between them, shiny and empty. Nolan looked down at his hands. I thought more was the point. I know. He nodded once. The next morning, Mara arrived at 5:45. 3 vehicles were already waiting. Lenora sat in the Buick with the seat reclined, sleeping behind sunglasses. Dale's 2 plumbing vans stood along the fence. Cornerstone's delivery van idled near the street, while Roy unloaded insulated coffee dispensers with the grim expression of a man personally responsible for caffeine. By 6:15, the lot was full. The old customers came first. Evelyn brought the expired coupon mounted in a small picture frame. Ruth arrived with tomatoes and became offended when nobody criticized their softness. Leonard carried 3 label boxes for any parts removed from his car, though he had scheduled only a battery test. Grace wore her scrubs and an orange safety vest borrowed from Dale. She directed cars with 2 sharp movements and the authority of someone accustomed to people making bad choices under stress. Newer customers filled the spaces between them, the florist's van, Natalie's red sedan. The landscaping truck repaired the day Brett took the compressor. Nolan's former client in the gray luxury car, paying the regular inspection fee. Mara stood in the first bay holding a clipboard. For one dizzy moment, every voice overlapped. Frank's name moved through conversations in different tones, fond, irritated, amused, unfinished. Then Ellis opened the first inspection lane. The work became work. They tested batteries, measured tire tread, checked fluids, scanned warning lights, and wrote estimates for repairs that would happen later. No one was promised what the shop could not deliver. Dangerous problems moved to red blocks. Maintenance went blue. Diagnoses went yellow. Brett arrived at 7 carrying ice. He joined Dale at the tire pressure station after signing one of Mara's liability forms. You made your brother sign? Lenora asked. He's a contractor. He painted your motor blue. Exactly. At 8:30, a familiar SUV stopped in the street. Nolan waited for an opening, then pulled into the one parking space he used to rent from Mara. His front brakes made a rough grinding sound loud enough for Ellis to look up. Nolan shut off the engine and sat behind the wheel a moment. Then he climbed out carrying his keys. I have a warning light, he said. How long? Mara asked. Since February. She stared at him. It was a busy spring. Behind him, the garage lot was crowded with people he once believed had returned out of pity. Nolan held out the keys. No offer, he said. No structure. Tell me what it needs. Mara took them. The keys were warm from Nolan's hand. Mara attached a red inspection tag and wrote his name in the first blank. You'll have to wait. I didn't make an appointment. That has consequences. Fair. The answer was so unlike him that she looked up. Nolan nodded toward the office. Can I get coffee? If Lenora hasn't declared it historic and preserved the last cup. Inside, Evelyn had placed her framed coupon beside the register like a religious object. Ruth was cutting tomatoes with a plastic knife. Leonard had begun labeling empty boxes for parts no one had removed. Nolan entered carefully, as if the waiting room belonged to a culture whose rules he did not know. Mara drove his SUV onto the lift. The front brake pads were worn nearly to their backing plates. The right rotor was deeply scored, and the caliper on that side did not release cleanly. One front tire had worn along the inner edge. The warning light came from an overdue service reminder, but the grinding had a simpler explanation. Nolan had continued driving after the wear indicator began scraping. Ellis shone a light across the rotor. Since February? He asked. That's what he said. He thought the sound would negotiate. He does. They lowered the SUV enough to show Nolan. He stood beneath the raised bay door while Mara explained the caliper, pads, rotors, and tire. Nolan listened without interrupting. He did not look embarrassed until she showed him the thin remains of the inner pad. Can I drive it home? He asked. No. What if I'm careful? No. I live 6 minutes away. You could live 6 feet away. Brett, checking lights in the next inspection lane, called over. She said no. Nolan turned. You're enjoying this. I'm wearing an orange vest and holding a tire gauge. I'm enjoying everything. Mara wrote the estimate using the posted labor rate. She included parts, tax, disposal, alignment, and the tire. No discount appeared at the bottom. Nolan read each line. "When?" he asked. "Tuesday. Maybe late Monday if the parts arrive. You can't do it today?" "This is an inspection morning. We promise people inspections." "I'm your brother. So is the man wearing Dale's vest. Neither of you has an appointment." Brett lifted the tire gauge in salute. Nolan looked at the total again. Mara waited for him to question the labor, the markup, or the fact that Bellwether Auto Supply could sell him the same brake pads for less. He signed. "Do you need a deposit?" he asked. "For the tire and caliper." He paid with a card. Mara processed it, handed him the receipt, and put his keys in the red tag tray. "No family rate?" he asked. She looked at him. Nolan's mouth moved at one corner. "Joke. Your humor needs work." "Family trait." A horn sounded near the street. Grace pointed a station wagon toward the overflow lane. Dale moved a cone. Roy emerged from behind the bakery van, carrying another coffee dispenser, and announcing that the first was empty because people had used cups larger than regulation. There was no regulation. By 9, Mara had inspected 11 vehicles. She found 2 batteries likely to fail before winter, 1 cracked serpentine belt, 3 filters that could wait, and a brake hose that could not. She refused to let the hose's owner drive away. He objected until Grace, still wearing the safety vest, asked whether he preferred an inconvenient morning or an exciting funeral. He accepted a ride from Dale. Not every customer came with a problem. George Larkin's pickup needed nothing beyond air and 1 tire. Evelyn's sedan remained healthy, despite her coupon. The florist's van had logged 6,000 miles since Mara replaced the axle boot and showed no uneven wear. Each clean inspection felt like a small proof that maintenance worked because people returned before something broke. At 10, an old Pontiac pulled into the lot. Mara recognized the engine note before the driver stepped out. The woman behind the wheel was Celia Burns, a retired hospice aide who had moved to Cincinnati 7 years earlier. Frank had kept the Pontiac alive through 2 radiators, an intake gasket, and repeated arguments about whether it was worth saving. Celia climbed out wearing bright yellow sandals and looked at the sign. "You're closed?" she asked. "Apparently. I drove 2 hours. You could have called. I did." A woman named Lenora answered. "That was your first warning." Celia hugged Mara before Mara could prepare for it. She smelled like sunscreen and peppermint. "I heard about Frank," Celia said. Mara had become skilled at receiving those words. She thanked people, accepted the softened expression that followed, and moved the conversation toward their cars. Celia did not let her. "He came to my retirement dinner," she said. "He complained about the restaurant. He brought his own hot sauce. That sounds right. He talked about you." Mara looked toward the inspection sheet. Celia touched her arm. "Not the way he should have." The sentence stopped her. "He said you were trying to make this place run after him," Celia continued. "He said it like you were impatient. I told him maybe you knew he wouldn't be here forever." "What did he say?" "He said forever was a stupid business model." Mara laughed, though her eyes burned. "That was 2 years before he got sick," Celia said. He knew. Knowing and saying were different jobs to that man. Across the lot, Ellis attached a battery tester to Lenora's Buick. Brett argued with Leonard about whether a removed air filter required a box. Nolan sat on Frank's stool, drinking coffee from a cup too small for his hands. Mara gave Celia an inspection form. "Pull into lane 2, she said. Celia smiled. "Yes, ma'am." Near 11:30, the line finally shortened. The pastry trays held only crumbs. Ruth's tomatoes had disappeared, except for one Frank would have called too soft. Grace left for work after returning Dale's vest. Dale stayed to collect cones, while Natalie counted coffee dispensers and discovered Roy had brought one belonging to another bakery. Ellis finished the Pontiac and parked it near the fence. 29, he told Mara. "We capped at 24. Pike math. How many need appointments?" 14. 3 urgent. Mara checked the red tag tray. Nolan's keys rested beside the keys from the station wagon with the failed brake hose. "We can fit the hose Monday," she said. Nolan Tuesday. "He's going to love that." He signed. Ellis looked through the office window. The sign still faced closed toward the street. "What?" Mara asked. "Nothing." That nothing has been going on for a year. Close to it. It kept people from thinking they could walk in. They walked in. It kept expectations controlled. Did it? No. Ellis wiped his hands on a towel. You repaired the other side. The wood was split. You repainted the word. It was faded. You made the letters bigger, perspective. He smiled. Mara looked across the lot. Frank's old customers had not returned as a single wave. They had come one at a time, bringing worn tires, dead batteries, expired coupons, and stories he should have told her himself. They had also brought expectations, bad timing, difficult bolts, disputed bills, and the possibility of disappointing people who trusted her. Nothing about their return had been easy. That was why it mattered. Mara nodded toward the sign. Ellis entered the office. He lifted it from the hook, turned it in his hands, and hung it again. Open faced the street. No one applauded. Lenora, passing with a trash bag, glanced at it and said, "About time." Then the phone rang. Mara laughed so hard she had to let Ellis answer. "Keene's garage," he said. "Yes, we're open." Nolan came to the counter after the final inspection left. His offer still sat between them, though there was no folder, no check, and nothing to sign. "I meant what I said last night," he told Mara. "So did I." "I know. You don't need to rescue this. I wasn't trying to rescue it. You wanted 30%. I was trying to get inside something that worked." The honesty arrived quietly. Brett came in carrying the folded tables. "You own a mortgage company. I work for one. You own the bungalow. So does the bank, if we're being philosophical." Brett set down the tables. "Please don't." Nolan looked around the office. Frank's stool, Evelyn's framed coupon, the printed calendar, the red and blue key tags. "He left you the place everybody came back to," he said. "He left me a roof with a coffee can in it. Both can be true." Mara leaned against the counter. Nolan had taken the bungalow and duplex as proof that Frank considered him dependable. Brett had taken the rentals as proof that Frank finally saw him as more than free labor. Mara had taken the garage because she could not decide whether it was love or punishment. All three had spent a year discovering that Frank's gifts contained his limitations along with his faith. "He should have divided things differently," Nolan said. "Would you have wanted the garage?" "No." "Would Brett?" Brett considered. "I like roofs. Cars have too many opinions." Mara looked at Nolan. "Then maybe he divided the property right and the explanation wrong." Nolan nodded slowly. "He did that a lot. He trusted you with houses because houses looked like success to him," Mara said. "He trusted Brett with buildings that needed work. He trusted me with this because he knew I'd keep doing the part he couldn't finish." "That sounds like love." It was. The word hurt less than it once had. "It was also cowardly," she added. Brett leaned against the doorframe. "That sounds like Grandpa." Nolan took out his wallet. "I can pay the full break balance now, after the repair. You don't trust me?" "I trust my system." He put the wallet away. Brett looked at the open sign. "Are we having a family moment?" "No," Mara and Nolan said together. "Good. I need to return these tables." "Borrowed?" Mara asked. Brett sighed. "Authorized." They cleaned the lot together. Nolan swept gravel from the office threshold without trying to redesign it. Brett loaded the tables and coolers. Lenora collected the framed coupon, then returned and placed it beside the register again. "It belongs here," she said. Evelyn had apparently donated it without informing anyone. After everyone left, Mara counted the inspection forms. 29 vehicles, 14 future appointments, 3 urgent repairs, no treasure, no sudden contract. Just work arranged into something that could continue. She locked the cash drawer and noticed a small frame lying beside it. Claire had returned Frank's dollar months earlier with the final transfer receipt. Mara had kept it in an envelope because displaying it felt sentimental, and Nolan had taught her to distrust sentiment when it concerned the garage. Lenora had found the envelope. The wrinkled bill sat behind glass, still folded down the middle. Beneath it, in Lenora's block handwriting, a label read, "Purchase price." Mara set the frame beside the register. Ellis came from the rear bay carrying Frank's brown flannel. "You left this on the hook," he said. "It lives there. It smells like shop. It always did." He hung it behind the office door. 7:15 Monday? He asked. 6:45, bakery inspection. He groaned. "You agreed to recurring schedules. I didn't agree to morning. You negotiated paid leave. I was protecting future employees." Within 3 months, there was one. Marisol Vega had worked the service counter at Parson Tire before it closed. She knew parts, disliked vague estimates, and could put Lenora on hold without starting a town feud. With Marisol managing calls and ordering, Mara and Ellis stopped leaving the bays every time the phone rang. Mara paid herself regularly. She also moved from Lenora's damp back room into a small apartment above a hardware store. Lenora raised no objection until Mara removed the last box, then complained that the exercise bicycle looked lonely. Brett kept his remaining rental house and stopped doing unpaid work for men, who promised the next check would be larger. Nolan sold the duplex, rented the bungalow, and never again promised anyone a family rate. When his SUV was finished, he paid the posted total and brought coffee the following morning without suggesting it counted toward the bill. The garage remained old. The alignment rack still needed its left connector cleaned twice a year. Brett's blue compressor motor offended Ellis on aesthetic grounds. The roof held, the calendar filled. Fleet vans arrived on their assigned mornings, and emergency slots remained open for people whose income depended on getting home. One evening, Mara stood behind the counter after Marisol and Ellis had left. The dollar frame caught the last sunlight through the window. Beside it lay tomorrow's printed schedule, one copy for the toolbox and one for Mara's back pocket. She switched off the office light. At the window, she lifted the sign and turned open toward herself. Closed faced the street. For the first time, the word did not look like grief, failure, or a door someone else had shut. It meant the work was finished for today. Mara locked the front office, tested the handle, and left the keys in her own hand. Tomorrow, people would return.